All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to February's caucus meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome to everybody in person, and welcome to everybody that's joining us virtually this evening. February is Career and Technical Education Month, and we celebrate all of the roles and all of the good work that Career and Technical Education does. And we're happy to be partners with the Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center, as well as career and technical education that occurs within our own frameworks of our own high school as well. The programs that we have in technical education, the programs we have within computer sciences, culinary arts, as well as the performing arts and art as well. So all of the programs that enable our students to get a full, well-rounded and enriched curriculum. So that is part of the celebration here in the month of February. Going into the agenda, so going into resignations, leaves, and transfers and employment under personnel for the February 13th, 2024 board agenda, we have resignation of Mrs. Miriam Coleman from the position of Title I aide. Mrs. Coleman has done a fabulous job in the role of Title I aide, and we wish her and her family the best as they relocate from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So thank you, Mrs. Coleman, for all that you have done. Again, we accept with regret the retirement of Mary Beth Simonik. She has done a fabulous job multiple years within our school district, serving capacities at high school and middle school, teaching our students Spanish and preparing them for the understanding of not just the Spanish language, but the cultures in which time learning and including such work of geography, that experience, and just all that she's done for our school district. So enjoy retirement, well-deserved. Employment, we have Aurora Schnar from Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, for the position of Coordinator of Human Resources. We're excited to welcome Aurora and the talents that she brings to the table and the wealth of experience that she also brings. We are excited also for Sarap Sengaz from Camp Hill also for the position of high school mathematics teacher. Sarap is coming to us with experiences both internationally and here within Pennsylvania. She is completing her master's degree in physics and has a wealth of experience, and she's super excited, and we're excited to have her join our team here within Susquenita School District. Change in status, Sarah Cunningham, moving across the scale from Bachelor Step 4 to Master Step 4. Courtney Group, going from an instructional aide, just a change in hourly pay because of working in what we would call a high-risk classroom, comes with an increase in pay based upon that assignment within the school district. Congratulations to Sarah Cunningham, who has earned tenure in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Induction support teacher, Mr. Jeremy Brokos, will be the induction teacher, mentor teacher for Sarap. Jeremy will be a great mentor teacher for Sarap, so we're excited for that partnership. Athletic coach resignation, we have Mr. Rick Gibney from the position of head coach for football, and some athletic coaches and volunteers for the spring of 2024 that will be paid under the coaching matrix. We have Mara Bigley, middle school head coach field hockey, Harley Straub, middle school assistant coach field hockey, Eric Hurt, middle school head coach boys soccer, Ryan Hostetter, middle school assistant coach, Callis Wexler, middle school head coach, Tony DeLellis, middle school assistant coach, Rodney Reed, head coach softball, Derek Bauer, assistant coach softball, Quinn Fisher, JV coach softball, Mark Britcher, assistant coach softball, Amanda Bell, head coach track and field, Lauren Gecker, assistant coach track and field, Olivia Brady, assistant coach track and field, Heather Chung, assistant coach track and field, volunteers Rick Knapp, track and field, and Vince McCollum, track and field volunteer. And we do have a motion to waive the coaches matrix for baseball coaches not to exceed the matrix amount of $11,325 for Austin Andianasio, head coach baseball, Eric Fisher, assistant coach baseball, Brian Such, JV coach baseball, Thomas Rao, assistant coach baseball, Andrew Burgett, assistant coach baseball, Jackson Hockenberry, assistant coach baseball, and Bryce Krieger, assistant coach baseball. We have that kind of is our resignations, leaves, transfers, and employment. Any questions on those agenda items?
Yeah, I do. Just regarding Rodney Reed, didn't we already approve him?
We did, and it should not be on there because we
Okay.
already approved him.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and strike that here and make a note of that. Thank
Okay.
you. I was thinking the same thing as I was reading those over.
Dr. Fox, that the one you stated was Jackson Hockenberry. It's actually Jason Hockenberry, just so that's clear.
Oh, it is correct on there. I just read it incorrectly. Thank you.
I just wanted to correct that because his 15-year-old son's name is Jackson Hockenberry. That would be odd to have him coaching the baseball team.
I agree. We'll let him play and not coach yet. Thanks. All right.
I have one other question regarding the baseball coaches. So historically, do we normally have a head coach and an assistant coach? Like how?
Typically, a head coach and assistant coach. I think last year they had several. I think they had 2 assistant coaches. They had a JV coach. I'll have to get back on the exact numbers. But since we did make a notation to break it up in the matrix a little bit differently, we wanted to note that and delineate that in the agenda. As of last year's coaches, I'm not sure how many.
I think normally there's a varsity head coach, an assistant coach, and then a JV head coach. Those are the 3 paid positions.
Okay. Because I didn't know that. That's why I was asking, because I just want to just wondering, because a lot of these coaches are new, so they would be on the lower end of that matrix. Right? Because that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just wondering how we,
If baseball waived the matrix, then their individual salaries will be listed on our agenda because it won't be according to the matrix. It'll be
yeah, they
according
are.
to how the
They're-
head coach.
I have the agenda up, and they are listed there.
Okay.
I just was wondering how we got to the 11,325, because I didn't know how many coaches were originally there that got to $11,000.
I'm
I didn't
guessing
know
she's
there-
asking if that's the 3 bottom salaries.
That's a good question.
Yes, that would be my understanding, but I will have to get that answer. And I believe Mr. Quigley will probably join us once basketball is concluded, and we
Okay.
can ask him that particular question.
But that is a great question. If we're not going to use the matrix, then what would be the base, how would we determine the base salary?
My understanding is, based on what Dr. Fox just read, is that not to exceed the budgeted amount, which would be what you would anticipate based on the matrix, your head coach, your assistant coach, and if there is another head coach position, what those 3 totaled together would
But
be.
that would depend on,
Yeah, but we
The
budgeted that a year before.
longevity.
We wouldn't even know who the coaches were.
right, it would depend on the longevity of the coaches.
Correct.
And if that changes, then that budgeted amount would change. That's something entirely we should look at in the future if we're going to hire outside the matrix, how we determine what that amount is.
To be honest with you, that should not be then based on the budgeted amount. That waiving the matrix would be, you're going to base it based on what the matrix amount would have been for those positions, right? Because if we budgeted $11,000 because we had a coach that had been here for 25 years, they would be making more money than somebody
Right.
that's coming in new, right? So if we hired somebody new, we'd make out that year, not just like buying, just like hiring a new teacher. You know, we hire a new teacher at a lower scale than somebody that retires that's been here for 35 years, right? So if, it shouldn't be just based on the budgeted amount, it should be based on what would those individuals have been getting paid as we hired them according to the matrix. And then if they want to split that up and give up their salary like Mr. Kibney did, then they can do that. But it shouldn't just be based on a budgeted amount.
So I think number 9, the motion, and we will make sure and go through the motion to waive the coaches matrix for baseball coaches not to exceed the matrix amount that's applied accordingly,
To
because.
what the normal coaches
Correct.
that we would hire would be.
Correct. Yep. Basically, you're waiving the matrix is what it should say, because the matrices amount. Sorry, thank you. The matrices amount is what determines what a coach is paid.
But you don't want to say you're just waiving the matrix, because waiving the matrix means they could really do what they wanted. We're waiving the application of the matrix to the 3 people and allowing them to divide that amount up amongst 7 or 6.
You have to use the matrix to come up with the base number.
Correct.
And then the distribution of that base number, that portion of the matrix can be waived according to the head coach.
And he can give up his salary
accordingly.
accordingly.
Okay.
Okay, we'll work on the wording, and then we will check that clarification point. Anything else? All right. Moving into agenda items. Sorry about that. We have item number C on the agenda, you will see, which is the 2022-23 audit. So a motion to approve the 22-23 financial statement and single audit provided by Clasic Associates. We are fortunate to have Tony here with us this evening, who will shortly be providing an overview of that single point audit. D is a motion to approve a refund in the amount of $456.79 face value for the 2023 real estate taxes to the Duncannon Fire Company for a property at 27 North High Street in Duncannon. So what had happened is, my understanding is that Duncannon Fire Company bought the lot next to bought a lot, and that lot transferred from a for-profit to a not-for-profit entity, and therefore they are asking that we waive this real estate portion that was assigned and give that back to them in terms of a credit.
Yes.
And being a not-for-profit entity, they provide a lot to the community.
Is that a prorated amount then for when they purchased? It looks like it is. Okay.
And this is a property on High Street?
That's correct. I believe it's near a church.
Oh, yep.
Like a stone parking lot.
We have number 10, which is a motion to approve first reading of 702.1, which is sponsorship. We also have, depending on conversations this evening, academic calendar, to approve the academic calendar for the 24-25 school year. And we have a disposition of items, which is a high school broken laminator. It no longer functions. And that rounds out agenda items. And if there are no questions, I will turn it over to Mr. Holmes in Finance.
You have two sheets in front of you. One says a funding source, that's our revenue. Revenue collected year-to-date, $19,018,310.09, which represents 57.75% of our expected revenue for the year. And the other document is the expenditures. Expenditures to date, $17,961,942.46, which represents 53.52% of expected revenues. Should I go into numbers? One of the frequent questions that I'm asked is, if you look at the percentage used, how we are over budget in some of our line items. And I do not have the base information from last year's budget. I was only given the budgeted numbers to upload into the system. So I don't have the detail of why, for example, a particular number was budgeted. If you'll remember this, this situation, I think we can rectify that with the budget going forward. You'll have a choice tonight of which way you would like to see the budget for next year, and I think that the options will prove to take care of this situation.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just to talk a little bit about curriculum instruction and assessment. A lot of stuff going on in our world this month, but I definitely wanted to take a moment and recognize that this is National School Counselors Week from February 5th to the 9th, and we will be recognizing our awesome school counselors on Facebook this week, so please make sure you take a look at those postings, and we will also be celebrating them on Monday at our meeting, so we're pretty excited about that. So National School Counselors Week, I want to make sure I mention their names: Ms. Harley Straub, Ms. Beth Smalley, Mr. Ben Seifert at the high school, Ms. Mara Bigley and Mr. Quentin Klingerman at the middle school, and Ms. Karen Mann and Mr. Andrew Schaefer at the elementary school. So make sure if you see them, wish them well. They do a wonderful job for us. I also wanted to make sure and bring up, we are working very closely with Mr. Funk at the high school and getting ready to work with our students on course selection and the interactive course selection book. I know last month at caucus, we talked a little bit about some changes and modifications that were going to be released in that manual. And I know, Mr. Funk, you had some things that you wanted to share in relation to the book as well.
Yes, thank you very much. So scheduling has officially started. We, meaning the counselors, Mr. Page and I came down and met with all the 8th grade students this afternoon to give them an overview of the scheduling process. The counselors at the middle school will be meeting with the students to go over their scheduling sheets. The high school counselors have started going into homerooms this week and going from 9th through 11th grade and going over the scheduling process and timelines and to get things collected and get things rolling for us to start working on, course numbers and things like that. So we're already in the throes of it. This Thursday evening, we'll be hosting 8th grade parents here in the LGI to give them, as we do every year, an overview of how the high school is very different with the selection of courses and what the students have to offer, have to take up here that we have to offer from from Career Technical Center to college and the high school to electives and things like that. So we're excited about that. All of you on your iPad should have received the course selection handbook. I know Mrs. Matash sent it out, and all the students also got that. There are a couple revisions that'll be getting up in an updated one. Then do you want me to go over that?
Oh, sure.
Sure. Okay, so I actually have a printout here to share.
Mr. Funk, did you say that we got a copy of the handbook?
In your
Yes.
self-service.
It's in your books app.
In my what
It
app?
should be in books.
Books.
So if you go to books,
Cool.
library, and you should see it under all.
But you'll see.
Thanks.
This is one of the main ones we had a big discussion about. Initially, it was proposed to be an iWorks, and based on your feedback, we moved away from iWorks to focus on everything across different platforms. So we totally revised the course title, changed it to Intro to Productivity Software, and basically the teacher will be working on different platforms. Unfortunately, what I put in there is sort of dates my age. Put Works, which is Microsoft, which was phased out in 2008. So I apologize and take full responsibility for that. I do not have Works on my computer at home, but I still call it Works. So
And you're using WordPerfect as your word?
yes, every now and then I'll just go DOS. Just that. So we proposed a new one and taking out, we're still going to do the Office, Google, Apple, but not specifically list those out because things change. Like we don't have Works anymore. And it could be another platform the teacher wants to use. So that's what we're going to update in the handbook that'll be resent out to all the students to make sure it's clear. So I do take responsibility for the Works posting.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
This is probably more of a middle school question. Do our students have any type of technology course at the middle school where they're also introduced to a word processor like, Microsoft Office or I assume Apple's because they have iPads? Like, is there anything curriculum-wise? Because this is a high school elective. So, but is there anything that we're giving all students at a middle level to prepare them to do basic things on the computer?
So currently, Mr. Fisher does an excellent job of looking through and utilizing certain software bases and giving them an introduction to a multitude of different platforms and have them work through pages, I believe some Excel on different pivot tables and what that sorting looks like. He does an excellent job of looking through that. Moving forward, certainly one of our goals is to always expose students with a multitude of different platforms, but most importantly, to look at a problem. That problem being whether it be a short paper or an essay, whether that problem being a presentation, whether that problem being how do I collaborate with a group of 3 or 4 people. And then being able to find, here's an array of different platforms. What platform works best for the problem that we have at hand to be able to solve it? So our job is to expose them to a lot of different platforms, not just a platform. And that's what our goal continues to be, has been, and will be, whether that be a Google platform, a Microsoft platform, an Apple platform. And there's pros and cons to every platform in which you use, but to be able to solve a problem.
I just have I guess, maybe and I don't even know that I'm using the right technological terms, but like Mike said, this is an elective that the students are that they can pick, right? If we are using iPads exclusively in our rooms, it seems like all students would get exposed to the Apple platform, whether that's Keynote, Pages, books, Notability, like all of that stuff. They're already getting every day in every class. It seems to me that it would be beneficial for the student to take this class to get exposed to a platform that they don't get every day, such as Google or Microsoft Office, to get them ready for anything they may face outside of here that's not on an Apple platform. So I guess I'm wondering why there would be more time spent on an Apple platform in this class and not have it still be for students to get exposed to platforms that they don't get every day in the use of their iPad.
Well, just because we're exposed to it doesn't mean we necessarily know how to use it fully. And I think that's the key and critical component is what are the features within there that you would maybe only use once or twice? Whether that be Apple, whether that be Google, whether that be Sheets, whether that be Excel, whether that be what is the platform, but how do we use it? What is the goal and what is that project that we want our students to work on? And then how do we use those platforms to be able to serve that? Whether that be pivot tables in Excel, or whether that be providing the back-end formula in Google Sheets to be able to rearrange or to look at inventory, perhaps in a student store. So to answer your question, yeah, all of it probably needs to be 100% included to be able to have an array of a multitude of different tools. Because just because we have it on there doesn't mean we know how to fully use it in that atmosphere within the context of a business-like setting.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think my concern would be when it's listed as students will be introduced to various platforms, this could be a 95% Apple class and 5% everything else. And I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way to launch our kids out of this school into the world when they've already had the opportunity to utilize Apple products in every class with all of those things, that maybe it would be better just to have this focus on something that a kid can get to be exposed to, like Excel and those things in Microsoft Office that, quite honestly, in the outside of high school, that's the predominant platforms that are being used.
Sure, and
That's just my
certainly if
thought.
that's the will of the board here, then that's the direction that we can go.
I thought that we were modifying this because of the licensing costs with the Microsoft Office suite, among other things.
That was the discussion, and I will say too that our students are using Google on the iPad. They're using Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google the PowerPoint product in Google. And a lot of times it might be dependent upon the teacher or dependent upon the student. The teacher just says do a presentation, and the students may pick Keynote, they may pick Canva, they may pick, you know, a multitude of applications. So it's not just the Apple products that they're using on the iPad.
And when I chatted with the teacher, went after the recommendations that you provided us, it was more of like this, we discussed your thoughts, and basically it was like, sure. And I said, well, it's not just changing the word, it's not just going to be an Apple and we change the words. He's like, no, we'll look at the different platforms, and having come from a business background, he goes, oh yeah, I can incorporate this, I can look at this. And so this is the first year we've rolled it out. It's a brand new course, he's developing it, and Mr. DeLellis is, I take him at his word, he's utmost professional, and he knows what they need in the business world. So I'm not going to sit here and say they won't touch on Apple, but I don't think it's going to be the primary product they're focusing on. I'm going to leave that up to him and his experience and what the students know, with monitoring, of course.
It was my understanding what was driving this was that Mr. Albin, our new computer teacher, is updating and doing a great job from what I can see. The computer software, what we're offering as far as gaming in Python and different languages, and that we were going to remove from his curriculum the Microsoft apps that were being taught in his curriculum. So it was being removed from there, from what I saw, and then it was being given back to the business department, and then this class was being created to kind of take all that in. Am I right, Christine? It wasn't, I mean, and by getting rid of Microsoft, we saved $13,000, but the genesis of this was the change in the computer curriculum, correct?
I thought it was what Jonathan said, that it was originally driven mostly because of getting rid of the Microsoft Office licensing.
Is that what that was?
I mean, I think it was a combination of everything. I don't really, I'm not sure what the connection is with Mr. Albin, so maybe I'm missing something.
No, I think there's an app development class that no longer, I think that's a part of it, but I don't think that's a standalone. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think doing away or not getting a license was the only impetus behind it. We certainly want to look at any opportunity we can. If we already have, built-in features within a device, we want to maximize those features without adding on. And certainly if it's the will here, as the guidance of our curriculum, to add that in there, we certainly will go ahead and do so and make sure that it's within the budget to do that and to have that within that course. But that's, again, when we can definitely steer that, and I'm fully confident that our teacher would be more than happy to have an array of different platforms at his disposal to be able to look to solve those problems within the classroom, to prepare the students for all different occupations and careers, not just a singular platform.
In the paperwork we got with the course selection stuff, which I appreciate so much, it said these are the additions and these are the deletions. And in there it specified we were deleting certain things from the computer science standpoint, and it was all the Microsoft Office stuff. And that was what was being deleted from that side. And then we were creating this Apple-based course on the other side. I don't want, personally, as one board member, I don't want to delete the Microsoft stuff in order to just save $13,000 a year. I want to make sure our students are getting that. So you asked what the desire of the board is. My desire would be to make sure that gets covered. And I agree, I would definitely trust Mr. DeLellis, and you guys would oversee the creation of a course for the first time. But as one board member, and I did get some response from community members the last time that said, absolutely, our kids are not going to be using Apple in the world. They need to learn these other products. So I, for one, would like to make sure that they're introduced to these Microsoft products and things like Adobe Acrobat and PDF files and things that they need to make sure they understand some of that stuff.
Sure, and that Microsoft, it's important to note, doesn't have to just be, it can be done on an iPad.
Absolutely.
And it was interesting, and we could go on about different devices, but just today, I was we were visited by two people going over certain elements within our roofs and the treatments of our roofs and all of those aspects to it. Well, both of them brought up on their iPad the thermal scans, and then they brought up and we talked about the utilization of that device, and really it came down to the portability, the flexibility, the power, the files, the organization, and the mobility associated with it. So I think there's a lot of pros and cons to anything as we move forward. We'll continue to have those discussions and how we can prepare students for everything. And that's the key word. Not just one thing, but everything, as best as we can, because we know it's rapidly changing by the second. And we're preparing students for careers yet that are not just, that haven't been created yet, which is exciting, and exciting times.
And I agree. I did find this. It said they were deleting Advanced Microsoft Office. They were deleting MS Access. They were deleting Adobe Photoshop and replacing it with this Apple-based course. I just
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr.
I just want to make
Funk.
sure that's not, that information, those tools aren't deleted from our
Yes.
curriculum.
I'm sorry, go.
No, and I was also going to say, it's important to note, just because a course is also in a course selection handbook and guide, it doesn't mean it's going to be ran. It's based upon enrollment of a students also. So some of those courses may not have been ran in the past due to enrollment. Is that accurate?
On and off, depends on the year. Dr. Jones, you are correct. I pulled up my sheet I gave to you, and those subjects or topics were going to be included in the iWorks, so they will be touched on in the productivity software, just not focusing it solely on the Apple. But yeah, Mr. Delos, he will be covering the Microsoft.
But they weren't, because we were going to save money by not getting the license with Microsoft. But now we've decided we're going to go ahead and renew that license at $13,000 a year.
You're
Right.
telling me that or asking me that?
I think we can't teach it if we don't
Well-
renew that. And we were told we weren't going to renew it, and it would save the district money. But now I think the direction is we are going to renew it so we could teach it, right?
I think what Mike's trying to say is what I gathered from is if you were to give us a preliminary budget tonight, it would not have had that Microsoft Office licensing in it tonight. Would that have been correct? Like, had that been removed from the budget for next year?
As we go through budget and line item discussions, my understanding is that was already in the budget, yes.
Is in the budget?
That's
or-
correct, it was.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying
If you're
that-
asking me if I thought we would need it, the answer I would sit here and say is, on top of other things, no. But again, you direct the curriculum and you direct where our budget goes, and if you feel it has a value, then it stays
Right.
as
No,
we
I-
move
I
through that
understand what you're-
process.
Yeah, I understand. I was thinking that it had already been removed, and that Mike's was brought up about the will of the board, perhaps. Is it the will of the board to bring it back on? If it had been removed, then I think what Mr. Funk Mike is trying to say is that it would not have been in Mr. DeLellis's class because he wouldn't have had access to the licensing to be able to teach it. Correct?
Correct.
But if
Thanks.
we decide we want to keep it, now it will be available, and he could use it as one of the platforms that he will be teaching in this class. That, right? Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Funk. I also just briefly wanted to bring up that next Thursday, February 15th, we do have an early dismissal, and we have parent-teacher conferences. So that opportunity is there to work within the buildings to be able to sign up and go into the building and talk with your teachers. Also, just want to make sure you're aware that we are prepping and working already on stuff for the summer. So we are working on our summer trade day options and our catalog that usually goes out to staff around the beginning of April. And we will make sure we have that here to share with you very soon. But I also wanted to make sure that we mentioned to you our featured opportunity this summer, which is our Lifted conference that we are organizing currently right now in conjunction and partnership with Bermudian Springs School District. I think everyone has a copy of kind of the flyer that we've created. We've been heavily trying to promote this and get it out in the community that this is a free conference and opportunity for anyone to come and visit our building and attend our sessions that day on June 11th. So Christine, I know we have like a website, but that information is on this as well. You can definitely scan and take a look at everything on the liftedconference.com. But we're really going to try to promote that with our staff this year and get everyone signed up to come and attend.
Who is Erin Murphy?
Erin Murphy is our featured speaker. She is, author of 3 different books. She actually is, I think, a director of innovation at Emmaus High School in the East Penn School District. So definitely one of our connections in looking at leadership and the PBL experience and learning. We thought she would be an awesome addition as a speaker, a featured keynote. And she's going to work on some different sessions with our attendees as well.
Would it be helpful for your advertising on it to have her information on there? You know what I mean?
I think it's on the website.
It's on the website?
Yeah,
Okay,
like if
cool.
you scan that or go to the Lifted conference, everything's kind of highlighted there to take a look at. It's pretty impressive. It's awesome. A lot of work is going into this, and we're just really excited to be able to host it.
Cool, thanks.
One last thing with curriculum from my end, I just wanted to give the board an update on the college and the high school. The Lackawanna registration, which was due this week, we had a total of 49 students register for 74 classes for just the spring at Lackawanna. We had about 6 for a fall semester, and we have about 2 that did Harrisburg U. So 74 classes, that's quite a bit. So very pleased that our students have this opportunity.
And in support of that, thank you to the Susquenita Blackhawk Foundation for their continued support, some students as well, to make those scholarships available for those who applied. All right.
Each of you have a folder in front of you with the audit results for our 2023 audit. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Anthony Gagliardi of Klasick and Associates. He is the lead audit manager on our audit, and pleased to have him here this evening to discuss the audit with you.
Thank you, Chester. So, as they said, everyone, my name's Tony Gallardi, and from Klasick and Associates. It's our first year doing the audit. So we have offices up in a little bit more north, Sunbury, Shamokin area. We even have an office down in Baltimore. But funny enough, I actually live just down by, just a little bit south of Harrisburg. So this is actually an easier drive for me coming here than going to my own office. So I try not to take extra long when I do this audit, I promise, or anything. But you know, it's always that nice little break. So what I'm going to do is just a brief overview on some, important points and all that I just wanted to discuss with everyone, and then if anyone has any questions, and of course, as everyone gets more of a chance to look at it in the coming time, if you guys have any additional questions for me, once you really get a chance to look at it, of course, you can pass those on to Dr. Fox and Mr. Holmes, and they'd be happy to get any answers for you guys as well. So I think the thing I want to start off with is, and this is really good for the good sign for the district, is you guys are down to only about 4 findings this year for your audit, where last year you had, I believe it was 12 or 13. So that's a testament to the financial staff here and all for the work they've done during the year. I do want to give them a lot of credit for that. Obviously we want to get to the point where there's 0, but that's such a big jump from year to year. Especially in a lot of important areas, because now that stuff like that goes away, you guys could look at more accurate financial statement information during the year, make those decisions based off that. So that's really where that becomes important. So again, I just want to say that's all the hard work, and I hope we can continue to work at it. And I know to clear some of these remaining findings, which are basically just like that the auditors are helping with audit adjustments, putting together the financial statements more. I think with Mr. Holmes there, throughout this whole fiscal year and additional staff, that we could get that down to, where you guys are really in a good spot with that. So, that's the plan with that. So we hope to continue to work hard at that and get there. So that's really, so that's the big part of that. And then I'm going to talk about, some of the additional numbers and all with that. So of course, if you guys look at about page 18 of your statement at the bottom, so page 16 and 18 are your balance sheet and income statement. And those are, of course, what the day-to-day operations reflect. You have your cash balances, any of your assets, liabilities, and all your revenue and expenditures. So last year under general fund, you guys had a small loss last year you guys did have a deficit last year under general fund. So that's just something to keep in mind. And of course, last year, which this will be going away in future years, was a lot of the COVID funds coming through and such. That came through the last couple of years. Of course, for this year, that's more running out. So you just want to be aware of decisions such, for expenses such as spending. You want to, of course, which you guys always do, monitor those decisions. Any additional revenues that you guys ever see fit, of course, this is always board decisions such as like raising taxes or any other way to see fit to in the future. Ways like that to keep gaining additional revenue for the district. Because you'll see like next year the revenue will probably go down quite a bit with those COVID funds running out, which is happening all across Pennsylvania, of course. So that's really the main part of those statements. The other stuff other than the COVID funds and such, and of course overhead, who can't say that their spending's increased even in our own personal lives. So of course, that's going up overall. So you'll see just in those statements, we have the general fund, capital reserve fund, capital projects. That just kind of brings a little more detail into each of those funds. And a couple pages down, I believe, starting on page 20, is the proprietary fund, which is the cafeteria fund. So we have to track that separately as well. And then for those who want to go through it or anything, starting on page 25 would be the notes to the financials. And that kind of breaks down all that information I gave more in detail, like such as what debt do you guys have available, what debt's outstanding, what do your capital assets look like, a little bit more detail to all those numbers. So it looks at anyone using the financial statements could kind of look at that. Like for example, you could look at how much more debt you guys have to pay and what years you guys have to pay that. That's just kind of broken down in those schedules there throughout. So, so that will just be on the corresponding pages when everyone gets a chance to look at that. And then as you go through, we test the financial statements, and then we also test something called the single audit, which this year you guys had no findings under the single audit, where I believe last year you guys had a few of those. So what the single audit is, for those who are thinking, there's two different audits, that's just a testing of your federal funds during the year that you guys spend. We're required based on certain guidelines, and it changes year to year what programs we have to look at, but we have to just test compliance with those items is what that is. So, of course, the last couple of years for most school districts, everyone's COVID funds got looked at under the ESSER programs. So I believe that was tested this year for the district, and sometimes some years such as child nutrition, the title programs, depending on how all that falls, that will be tested. So again, it was good news that there was no findings on that this year. Shows everything's being spent correctly, and there was no issues with that.
Can I just interrupt you, Jude? So just so I'm not I want to listen to everything you're saying, I'm
course, yeah.
searching. What did we end up at the end of the year? Were we to the good or to the bad?
Oh, you had about $90,000 deficit under general fund.
Okay.
And then under your capital projects or reserve, you guys use the rest of that money. So technically you're at about an $825,000 deficit, but that's just because that's added in with capital projects all being spent during the year. But the big part is the general fund, which is about just under $90,000 deficit, which is of course where your day-to-day spending and all happens.
That's actually pretty good, right?
Oh, I didn't understand the capital projects part.
Yep. So you guys had a fund for that you had for different projects that you guys are doing. So basically, you guys had a little bit of a fund balance left for that last year, and that was all spent during the year is what happened with that. So that's why, in other words, you had no revenue coming in under that fund. It's all expenses, which you guys would have budgeted for and such.
But we did not have a capital projects deficit. We had more money in our capital projects fund than we spent on capital projects.
You spent all your money, so you had just under $800,000 to begin with in the year, and you guys spent that whole fund balance. So now it's down to zero.
I think
We're-
what
I'm-
Leanne and
I'm-
Mike are trying to ask you is how much we spent that we didn't bring in for the whole year. That's the number they're asking you for, and
Yep.
$90,000 doesn't seem right.
Well, overall, then including, that's what I said, including capital projects at 825,000.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
So you're talking capital projects. In my head, I'm hearing capital reserve.
So there's a capital reserve fund, and then there's also capital project fund, is what that is.
So we normally have our general fund, our capital reserve, and then we have, what's the other fund?
Cafeteria fund?
Just our regular,
General
General-
fund.
general,
Yeah, your general fund is like your day-to-day activities.
right?
So we were $800,000 negative. What were we budgeted?
2.5 million?
2.5?
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought.
So,
And
so I
again,
guess,
just some,
so I guess
sorry,
what
go
I'm
ahead.
asking is, if we budgeted $34 million, making round numbers, how much do we come in under or over what our regular budget was? Is that the 800,000?
So that's just on your actual numbers, is 800,000. That's on your actual, that doesn't have anything to do with your budgeted numbers. That's like what you guys actually spent or received during the year. So if you wait.
I see what you're saying.
I think he's looking for the number. If you give him 1
Yeah,
second.
I see what you're saying. I think I understand that.
I don't remember if it was 1.8 or if it was 2.5. I thought it was 2.5, but
So we have our fund balance, which has, what, 8 million or something in it?
So actually, it's about double that. So general fund, your total fund balance at the end of the year is like 15.8 million.
And we have our capital reserve. And then the cafeteria piece, I'm not worried about at all. So between the capital reserve and our fund balance,
Yeah, capital reserve is, 1.6 million.
okay, and when you're talking about capital projects, we don't really have a separate budget for capital projects.
No, you wouldn't, but so basically you guys are required to have, by state standards, have your own fund for that during the year, and we have to report on that separately based on like the amount and all that got spent. So that's kind of what that is, and that's just basically the money you guys use for those projects.
So
you
if we
know.
have a capital project, we can take that money out of capital reserve, or we could take that money out of our general fund balance, but you just call it a capital fund project.
That's
So-
a fund for, yes, correct.
Mike, basically, when we vote on the budget, that's all lumped into one big number.
Yes.
And then when he reports on it, he has to break it into 3 different categories and I think that's why he's confusing you, because we only ever talk about our general fund and our capital expenses. We don't talk about the third one, which is just a way that they do it in accounting.
So forgetting what we budgeted for, if you just take the total income and the total expenses and forget what we spent it on, whether it was capital projects or something else, we were $800,000 in deficit.
Yes. And just
Yeah.
keep in mind, last year too, a lot of that was, remember, with the COVID funds and all coming in, like I said, that's not gonna be the same case like this coming fiscal
Correct.
year. That was a big difference for the districts the last couple of years, like millions and millions of dollars, those extra funds.
So I think the question Leanne had, and I think we're looking for it, is we were budgeted to have a $2.5 million deficit, I think, or something similar to that. But we actually
Without
were.
100% verifying, and I'll have to go back through and take a look, I believe it was close to 2.2, but it was a little bit shy under that. But I'll have to go back through and verify what that was.
Our actual
You can make it an
deficit
Apple
is
form
more
instead of
like
a Google form so
800,000.
we could find it.
Yeah, and I'm almost positive that your revenues came in over budget because of the instances I said. Yeah, it looks like your revenues are about 2.3 million over budget. But again, that was just because of those, no one really knew what was coming in with those. A lot, those ESSER funds were crazy funds during the year that again, you're not gonna be able to use for this coming year. So that's really why the discrepancy in the budget exists. I know what you guys are saying, like, if we're doing this, why is it showing that? It's probably like but that really is the big difference. Why your expenses are pretty much right around what you budgeted for. Your revenue, though, is the thing that's very much different on your budget.
So I think this is more of a question for our business manager than I am assuming we will be taking $800,000 out of our budget reserve to make up for the $800,000 deficit. Is that correct?
That is correct. It would come out of our fund balance. That's accurate.
Okay.
Yep, so again, just the fund balance is something I tell all the districts to continue to watch because, of course,
yes.
which you, as you guys know, because of course, looks healthy, but some different things and all that could come up. You never know what's gonna come. I know that the debt is, your debt is getting payments are getting like lower and lower every year too, which is a good thing in the coming years, things like that, but who knows what else, that's more of a district itself thing, but, things like that, so.
The budget from 2022-2023 anticipated revenues of $33,796,274 and expenditures budgeted at $35,992,157. There was a projected deficit submitted to the state of $2,195,883.
Yeah, and what we report on in the financials on the budget to actual schedule, it would be, which is on page 61, that's only under the general fund that we're required,
So where are our revenues? Because I would think that we would have had a pretty good idea what we were getting with Esther's money.
Yes.
Did the revenues go up because did we get more money from the state?
Revenues were increased for several reasons. One of them would have been a higher earned income tax collection
Okay.
than what was budgeted, and also a higher collection percentage of the real estate tax revenue. So those two things combined. When we set the budget, send it into the state, we have to predict to them what we believe we're going to collect.
Okay.
And last year, I believe it was 96.25%. We came in somewhere around 97% for collections.
Okay. So I guess I feel a little more comfortable with that than having it be Esther's money that we didn't account for, right?
Yeah, because we sat in meetings and talked about Esther's money and where you're going to divide it out over the next couple
No,
of years.
Esther's
that was
fund and
budgeted.
revenue is within there. I think what Tony is alluding to is just be caution, and he's kind of using a larger disclaimer, as he would with a lot of school districts. Just be aware that Esther's came off the revenue books, and we knew that coming in, that it is not a long-term fix financially for a revenue stream. And we did not add new elements in expenses. Those were used as a relief to some of the expenses we currently had. It is also important to note that as we build our budget, we do not know what the Commonwealth's basic ed funding subsidy is going to be provided to us. The governor had his 12/30 release of what his preliminary budget should look like for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and it looks pretty friendly for public schools, but there's a lot of work, just as there's a lot of work with ours, that needs to transpire as well, too.
And then for people looking at the audit report, later in the, starting on page, this kind of goes into a little more detail on the findings for anyone who wants, starting on page 71, it just goes into a little bit more detail of what we would have found and such during the year on those, along with, our recommendations. So, like, as I kind of talked about earlier, we plan to meet with the district, as a post-audit meeting and kind of go over best procedures in place to ensure, everything gets closed correctly, everything, gets done. And we're hoping we talk to you guys a couple months earlier next year, even then in February, about the June 30 fiscal year end audit.
I want to, just in public, certainly, Tony, and on behalf of yourself and all the work that you've done with Klasick and Associates, being our auditor, we appreciate all of our meetings, all of our discussions, willingness to work with us, and make this process, certainly as smooth as possible. And we look forward to our continued partnership as our goal certainly has and will be to come back next year with zero, and to continue and to have this thing tightened up a couple months earlier. And I'm sure that's your goal as well, too. And we have a good plan in place to be able to address that.
Well, like I said, it really is a good mark for the district because you usually don't see a big change like that from year to year, in all honesty, from my different experience. So again, that just helps things overall, such as like planning for everyone. You guys, again, what the board and such is looking at, would be more accurate, going for, things like that always, if you have correct financial statements, that helps any kind of decision making. So with those proper procedures in place, that goes a long way in those kind of decisions as well. And I want to thank, of course, Dr. Fox for bringing us in, and Chester and the business office staff for, all their hard work and, getting us information. And, the first year at any audit's a little bit, you're kind of learning about each other, everyone does stuff a little differently. So, usually by the second year, then you're all used to each other and you can kind of, hit the ground running too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, and to the business office for all of your work. And, you never arrive. We continually have work to do, things to improve on. And as new different programs come through, our ability to communicate and track and to partner with you to make sure that all of that is being tracked accordingly, properly, and working together for the betterment of our school district. Again, want to thank you, and thank you for the maple donuts as well.
Of course,
They're my
anytime.
favorites.
And does anyone have any more questions or anything for me?
No, thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I guess next year I'll have to bring in the maple donuts then to the board, I guess is what Dr. Fox is saying, huh? Okay. I mean, I do pass it on my way up, so okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right, we are going to transition now into our next item for discussion, which is our device refresh cycle overview. So a lot of work went into that, discussions, planning. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Snyder, who's going to take the lead on the beginning of this presentation. Ms. Snyder?
Thank you, Dr. Fox. We are really excited to talk to you a little bit about some of our thought process and the ways that we've been looking at how to optimize learning with our student devices, and a possible sort of new thought process with the refresh cycle. We wanted to start out talking a little bit about the why we do what we do, why we look at all of this, and we know the positive impact of technology on student engagement, collaboration, and learning outcomes. It's really what our driver for what we do, and we know that technology prepares students for the digital world. And I'm not going to read it all to you, but we do have it kind of typed up there, and it is on our district website. Really, it's our mission statement, and the things that we do every day aligns with our mission statement, and a part of that is utilizing progressive technology with our students on a daily basis. And then talking a little bit about the what. So we know that, year after year that we've been using student devices. They are, and they have become more integrated into the curriculum, where teachers are really thinking about technology usage as they're developing lesson plans and working with their students every day. And really what we've come to see is that technology enhances all subject areas. So Christine found some really nice pictures to put on there just to kind of show you some work that we've done. And we know that we've come to you many, many times sharing different ways that we have utilized technology with our students in the classroom. And we would love to continue to do that.
Sure, and just some of the examples which I think we've kind of showcased were the President's Book with Mr. Shepler and Mrs. Book last year, really working together, both of them creating the book. Mr. Shepler creating it with his high school students in Pages, and then going down, as you can see, working with the elementary students on that book, and then the elementary students creating it and then sharing with the rest of the elementary school in a museum sort of session to kind of really focus on that. So that's what those pictures are. We have a lot of other examples, but that's just the one. And like Ms. Snyder said, we want to kind of change our device life cycle, just a different approach in order for all of our students to continue to have the technology that the administration and staff really feel is important for our students to look at those 4 C's, the creativity, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. With that in mind, we want to make sure that we're looking at the lifespan of the devices and making sure that we're being fiscally responsible with minimizing, without vulnerabilities to the devices, to our network, and making sure that we are giving our students the best that we can. So in the past, we were refreshing the iPad, our device cycle, every 2 years. When we moved K to 12, that may not be as fiscally capable now that it's larger number of devices. So we just wanted to kind of look at how we can make that work better for our budget. So what we came up with was in grades 5 through 12, giving them a new device every 3 years, and then at year 4, trickling some of those devices down to K through 4. So K through 4 would be using in years 4, 5, and 6 an iPad that's 4, 5, and 6 years old. So 5 through 12 would have new every 3 years. Keep it for 3 years. 4th year it would go down.
So in essence, what we're trying to do is maximize the life out of these devices and use them for a longer period of time and get a maximum value out of those devices without just selling them back, but using them and kind of having this continual flow.
And looking at that, so the benefits of that 3-year refresh with our grades 5 through 12, right? So we want to look at cost savings. So why are we doing it? So looking at cost savings, but ensuring that we have devices that are up to date, that we're budgeting every year. So it's that consistent budget. The board knows what to expect. The administration knows what to expect in that budgeting. Improved performance, so just making sure that in those grades 5 through 12 that they have the most updated version of the devices so that they can work on apps that are up to date. Now without, and we really believe keeping it for 6 years, that the K through 4 in years 4, 5, and 6 will have that same capability, but we will be keeping them at school. We're not taking them home, so they'll have less likely of diminishing of the iPad.
Potential damage, yeah.
Right. So here, just again, that enhanced security, keeping the 3-year refresh at grades 5 through 12. Remember, we were 2 years. We held on for another year. So now we're looking at 3 years, every 3 years for 5 through 12. I have 2 computers here with the same presentation, sorry. And then cascading those devices years 4 through 6 into K through 4, making sure that that continued approach ensures that all of our students, K through 12, have access to the device, to a device that we feel is, like I said earlier, important to those 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. So really, that's our presentation. That was our new plan on a new refresh cycle. We wanted to kind of give you just an overview, right? Not too much into the weeds, but kind of give you an overview of what our vision is and see if you had any questions.
I had 2 real quick. And I'll ask them both, and then you can figure out how to answer them. We used to do, if I remember correctly, a 2-year cycle because that was more economically beneficial, because they were worth more after 2 years, so we could get a greater resale value than if we held on to them longer than 2 years. So what I'm hearing now is maybe it would be more economically beneficial to hold on to them for 3 years. So that's the one question. The second part of that question is, if we can hold on to them for 3, can we consider holding on to them for 4? And the only reason I say that is then a student can get an iPad when they start middle school, and they have the same iPad. They're responsible for that iPad. That is your iPad until you get to high school. And then they get a new iPad in ninth grade, and they would have that iPad until they graduate. And I'm thinking in college, I'm hoping my kid's not going to want a new laptop every 2 or 3 years. We're going to give him a laptop. He's going to go to college. That's going to be his laptop till he graduates from college. So I guess I'm wondering about a 4-year, and then I'm wondering if economically a 4-year versus a 3-year makes sense, because originally it was 2 years because of a resale value.
Yeah, so we talked about all these things, and I have to say, we had a series of different meetings, starting from last summer all the way to where we are now. It was a lot of fun, to be quite honest with you, to really kind of spitball, if you will, if that's the right word, to throw ideas out, seeing what works, what doesn't work, what's a good idea versus what isn't. Financially, yeah, there is probably a higher resale value in 2 years. No question about that. 100%. We're saying, we believe that instead of selling them, we can get another additional years out of those, so that device to us may be more applicable than selling it, depending on what the market value, is that the right term to use, for whatever company would buy those assets and devices.
And I think looking at when we were doing the every 2 years, it was 7 through 12, right? It wasn't K to 12. So looking at ensuring that we can make sure all K through 12 students have a device is why we went back and looked at that refresh cycle to try to make it work more fiscally responsible for K to 12.
So, without throwing a kink in all the work that you've already done, to me personally, Mike's statement makes a lot of sense. Because if you're going to replace them at 5th grade and 9th grade, you can drop them down every year, and the other kids would be using them till 6 years, and then you would be getting rid of them because you'd be replacing 2 grades every year and dropping 2 grades off the bottom grades every 2 years, doing the 4-month cycle. And I bring into account that my school iPad is 4 years old as of current, and it works just fine.
Well, this is the 3rd year for them. I do think that, but it's a 4-year-old device maybe.
Mine was replaced in 2020.
Oh, really?
I didn't get a new one in 2021.
So I think we could definitely look at all the different options. But I just want to make sure that, when you have, and not that we can't look at it, but when you have multiple devices in a school, and I'm not really sure if you're saying 5, and then.
So basically, you would take the 12th grade ones and the 8th grade ones and replace them every year for the new kids coming into those grades, which would be 5 and 9. And then you would take those 2 and drop them down to the 1st and 2nd grade. And then the following year, you would drop down the 5 and 9, the 8 and 12 again, and then those would be 6 years old every time you were replacing them in the elementary.
So though in the elementary, then we would have like five generations of iPad potentially, and not saying.
No, you would have 2. You would have, because you're going to replace 5th grade and 9th grade every year.
So 3, potentially 3 generations.
You could possibly have 3.
Right.
So I guess, and again, I am a novice at this. So if a 9th grader gets an iPad and they keep it until they're a senior, are we saying that there's going to be such a change in technology by the time they're a senior that their iPad that is 3 years old will not have the capability to do what it needs to do?
No, I don't think necessarily, and I can't speak for that we're saying that it doesn't. I think what we're saying is we want to be mindful of the elementary students and making sure that they don't have a device that's over 6 years old within that, because it does begin to have iOS updates that need to make sure that they're still being able to be updated, that there's no vulnerabilities, that there's not interface issues related to those.
So what would be wrong with a kindergarten or first grade student having to use an iPad that's 6 years old? I mean, we have people, I'm sure, that are listening to this that have computers in their home that are a lot more than 6 years old.
So 6 years old, nothing. What we want to do is just make sure, though, what we've researched and seen is if you start going past the 6-year mark, there is sometimes the inability to do updates. And we want to make sure those updates, because those updates are patches. And those patches provide that security that is needed to make sure there's no vulnerabilities. And I'm not saying there's never a vulnerability, but those help protect those.
Right, so our network,
there's a
viruses, malware, there's a lot of things that could negatively happen if we don't have a device that can be updated.
Because I was always told Apple was the way to go because they are not as vulnerable to viruses and those sorts
True,
of things.
but it gets to a point where they strategically, it's probably part of their business model. They want you to replace the hardware, so they make it so that the latest iOS cannot be installed on the older devices. So if you're currently sitting on an iPhone 8 that you've managed to keep around this long, you probably can't download even iOS 16, and they're currently on 17, right? And that's, every time they come out with a new iOS, they not only apply the latest security patches and software because the hackers are advancing in their skills to be able to break through the operating system, but the applications that install on the devices as well can't install. So they'll go away. They're only able to be installed in the
So if
latest
we're using
iOS.
them in kindergarten, and I've seen them used in kindergarten quite effectively, actually, in other schools, and we're using them in kindergarten, and they have to take and color the fire engine red or do whatever, they're learning colors and things. Is there, if using an old iOS system not give them the ability to do addition and multiplication, and then when they do the addition correctly, it gives them a prize, and balloons fall or whatever. Are we saying that can't be done if the iOS unit is old, or are we saying that they could be subjected to like online predators or something? If that,
Combination of things. The app that they use for the learning could potentially not be able to be installed on the iPad that is now 3 versions of the operating system behind is the issue. It's not,
So if you have the app on your hard drive, if they update their iOS system, your hard drive might not work. Could we not install the app like on the actual device?
eventually what happens is my understanding, and Christine's probably better at this than me, but the device is so old that Apple, it's like how Windows eventually, Windows 98, Windows 2000, completely unsupported now, so, you can't do anything. Yeah, Microsoft Works. I'm going to bow out at this point and let Christine take over. But it's just an old operating system that the apps that we are using on the current versions would very possibly not even be able to be installed through the App Store. So we could get to a point where the kids can't use Canvas. The necessary things wouldn't actually even be able to be loaded on the device.
The only reason
I'm not saying it's a guarantee. There's no guarantee.
And the only reason I'm asking this question, the only reason I'm saying 4-year rotation is if we're looking at, $3-4 million deficit, then I'm looking at, this device may not be fast or may not work well, as opposed to it won't work at all. Because with the amount of deficit we're looking at, we may not be able to have devices work at peak performance, but at least they're going to have a device, But so to me, it's a question of this will not work versus it's going to be cumbersome. And I think we're at a point now where cumbersome may be all we can afford if we're looking at $4 million deficit.
The problem is I don't think we know the answer
Well,
to
and
it.
I do think the safety and security of our students and staff has to be considered. And I get daily emails on what applications, what operating systems have to be updated because they're vulnerable. And Apple, while I would agree with you, it is less likely to happen, it does happen. And I do think that the people out there, if they know that we have devices that are 8 years old and that are not being able to be updated, we will be a target. So I don't disagree that potentially an old device could be used, and maybe it's a little slower. That's fine. For me, it's the safety and security of our students and staff in cybersecurity. So our physical security is just as important as the cybersecurity, and I think that we need to just be cognizant of that.
And I would just say instructionally, if we're having devices that are that old, that may have some technical difficulties, if you have a technical difficulty with a 11th grader, 10th grader within a classroom setting, it's very easy for, hey, let's do this, this, and this. But having 26-year-olds where they might be 3 or 4 or 5 different technical issues going on at the same time, that teacher has to go around it individually, and then we've wasted 25 minutes. And then at that point, teachers are saying, well, why am I even doing this regardless? So they're kind of a waste of time too. So keeping that in mind as well, especially for those old devices. And if they're not being pushed out or they're not being able to be updated, because I was thinking about even my device, it'll say, hey, you need to update this. Well, if you have an old enough device, then you can't even update it anyway. So keeping them updated, and we want to keep promoting that technology, just remembering those little guys working through.
See, I think Mike is saying though that he's still okay with the 6 years, and the 4-year layout that I did replaces them within 6 years every time, because you're buying for 2 grade levels every year and dropping their 4-year-old ones that are people who are moving on to the next level down to the elementary school. So I understand the dilemma that second grade and first grade could have a 12, and kindergarten and fourth grade, or however you divide it up, could have a 13. I get that point, but I still don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. It's going to be the same thing where you're not going to go past 6 years in the elementary school. And I think the 6 years, I would agree with you on that that's the cutoff. But obviously, we don't need to replace them, and I agree with you on this too, every 2 years anymore, because even Apple in their last earnings statement said that people aren't replacing their cell phones every year anymore. They're going 2, 3, 4 years, and because they work so well, and the upgrades really aren't that much of a difference. And I do agree 100%. If you go past 6 years, I think the security is not going to be there. And like you said, some of the apps are just not going to work. It's not any different with an Android. They stop supporting that stuff too at the 5 to 6 year mark. I think Apple now is not supporting iPhone 9s, so that would be about 6 years.
Yeah, I
My
had
guess
an
is 8 was
iPhone
pretty
7
close.
up until last year,
Okay.
not 1 year ago, and my iPhone 7 was working just fine. And Ray still has an iPhone 7, so you were saying iPhone 8.
They
we still had 7.
do work, but they don't
They work,
support
but
them
you-
anymore.
I understand that.
So you don't have
but
security.
They were still supporting the 7.
No, the
Okay.
8s they stopped 2 years ago.
Okay.
I think a lot of what you're saying, though, we have to have Christine or whoever, because now you're talking about going from every other year we're refreshing to every year you're talking about taking some. I understand you're talking some, but I thought a large part of the issue was now you're talking about a smaller quantity, so they're going to drive up the per unit cost, or maybe not. But anyhow, what would be a fun. We're talking about these devices that are potentially getting slow and all this. I think we should line everybody up and put them on 56K dial-up and see how they behave. You know what I mean? They want to see a slow device. Imagine the kids that have never seen what internet was really like when we started, right, Jason?
I have a question. Maybe don't shoot the messenger when I ask this question, please. So I was doing, a little bit of reading regarding the use of iPads, Chromebooks, because I know that came up at one point. And I found actually an unbiased site, because that's pretty hard to find, right? Because everybody has an agenda of which one they want to do. And they said one of the things to consider when you're looking at devices for technology in your school is the age of the student. And the recommendation was to have Chromebooks in your secondary schools and iPads in your elementary school. So I thought I just thought I'd just check a couple of local school districts. Cumberland Valley has iPads in their elementary school, Chromebooks in their secondary school. East Penn has iPads in their elementary school, Chromebooks in their secondary schools. East Penn and Emmaus has iPad in their elementary school, Chromebook. So they're following that sort of thought process. I know that's not popular. I know that we're an Apple Distinguished School, and that changes a whole lot of things. But I'm wondering if we're looking at the educational benefit for the student, should we be looking in that direction? And Cumberland Valley does do a 4-year refresh. So they give the student in first grade and they must have them available for kindergartners, but it sounds like they get assigned one in first grade, an iPad, a Chromebook in fifth grade, and a Chromebook in ninth grade. And so that seems to be working for them. That's just been new this year. They started that refresh, because I think they actually just went one-to-one. Cumberland Valley did.
Did we look into what kind of IT department that they have to maintain that sort of infrastructure, though?
Well, East Penn's not that much bigger than us.
It doesn't mean they don't have twice as many
What I'm
IT
saying
resources
is,
as
what
we
I'm
do.
saying is that then, it's,
Explain to me, what I don't know enough, is about
The
why.
experts back there, I mean, I would think that that variation with the, of
So-
devices.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked to a tech director today that has multiple devices. It definitely plays a part, because then you're managing multiple MDMs, you're managing multiple applications, you're managing multiple types of devices. I'm not saying it's not doable, but I mean, I feel like, why are they saying Chromebooks? I'm just going to throw that out there. What sets the Chromebook for secondary apart from the iPad that the iPad can't do, right? But I do think that the iPad has more capability than the Chromebook in the sense of creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration. So.
I think you'll see a variation of different models. You know, if we look at all 500 school districts, from Chromebooks to various Chromebooks to grabbing any device at some point that you really could and kind of putting that device out. For ours, really, when we look at our model, it's a systematic process. And if a keyboard is something that we want to look at, they do make a case that has a keyboard integrated in it, so it's not an add-on Bluetooth. And that's something we can certainly look at. If that is it potentially. Potentially, not necessarily, but potentially.
I looked at that integration just.
Well, the Pro keyboard is a little bit more expensive than the iPad keyboard.
I think also, you know, one of our goals also is as our fixed desktops that we have in these computer labs begin to fail, our goal is exactly what you said, to also integrate laptops and have those laptops available with carts that our students or our teachers can push in and use those devices, because there's various different functionality associated with a multitude of different devices that is certainly needed. So I think some of the standalone labs that we were once used to can be more movable and mobile labs that can go to the teacher, or the student can go into the library to utilize one of those devices. Pardon? Possibly. I don't see why they wouldn't at this point. I have no reason not to. But again, if we're using a Mac, and we already talked about Windows, and if it has Windows built in, what's the difference of using a PC versus a Mac, if that Windows functionality is available within it? To me, it's what are you...
Well, the difference is it won't crash as much. Or the Mac.
I guess one thing that I heard tonight, which is exciting me a lot, actually, if we could figure this out so that we could have a standard, basically budgeted amount each year, because I I'm really tired of having this conversation every year. It makes me sick to my stomach. I'm sure it makes Christine sick to her stomach. But we've been having these same conversations, and it feels like they change, and I know things do change. But I think we need to make some decisions and standardize this in some way, which is what I heard we're looking to do. Again, I still think we need to look at the 4-year thing, which Phil, I think, explained better than I did, and look at some of those costs. But I really don't want to keep having this conversation because, you know, well, you all know how I feel about some of this. But if we know a budgeted amount and we can start to move forward on that amount and stop having this conversation every year, it would make things so much easier.
Yeah, I think certainly having a fixed amount and adopting a particular cycle is beneficial. And
Yeah,
we
I
can
was
come-
around, I'm sorry, we were going to do 9 to 12, and then they were like, well, we got to do 8th grade to teach them how to use it in 9th grade, and then we were going to do this, and then it was COVID, and then we're going to just get them at the elementary school long enough to get through COVID, and now we're doing 1-to-1 in kindergarten because it's just so, which I'm not a fan of 1-to-1, and even the elementary perhaps at all. But if that's the district feels we need to do that, then, this plan is better than giving them a kindergarten or a new laptop every 2 years or a new iPad. But we need to get something consistent on the books so we can stop having this conversation.
And we certainly believe the same.
I want to congratulate all the work that went into figuring that out, though.
Thank you. And is that kind of the direction you would like us to go back? And we enjoy our conversations. I mean, we really do. And we could take a look at a 4-year model and see what that would look like.
So I guess I would say I think the 2 takeaways would be if we wanted to entertain the idea of yearly refresh for 2 of the grades, that, you know, is a possibility, and then bump the 3 to 4. Pull those together, run it by everybody, see where we're at, right? Is that, after all that, I think those were the 2 key.
Yeah, and you might find that the 3-year refresh, because of the fact you're buying more, might be cheaper. It was just a suggestion
Yeah.
to get the 4 years out of it.
Not bad, I mean.
This is not a takeaway, but if I had my druthers and I'm one person, I would rather we just take a look at whether we begin to transition away from Apple into using some type of PCs because they are cheaper and more economical. But I don't think that's on the table. If I had my dream, that would be on the table just because of the sheer costs. But if that's not on the table, and I understand it's not, then at least what you just said, Jonathan, I think is maybe a step in at least a different direction, which is still going to benefit our kids and hopefully not be as much of a strain on our budget.
Yeah, honestly, I think to everybody's defense that's been working on this, the only reason this keeps coming up every year after year is because that line item seems to increase year after year. It's not that we're not, you know what I mean? So when we say we want a fixed item in there, it's going to be fixed for the next cycle, and then after that, they're going to increase it again. So it's going to, you know what I mean? It's unfortunately going to continue to grow, but that's why we're trying to stretch it out to make it less.
We keep adding grades. Like, now we've got all 12. So,
Well, that is true, yeah.
So how many more people can we give a laptop to every year? Like, now everyone gets one. So I think.
Well, if I can get a laptop instead of the iPad, I'll take one, thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Moving along, unless anybody needs a break. Anybody want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, let's take a break for next Tuesday.
Well, let's move along. Based on your feedback from last caucus meeting, we went ahead and adjusted some elements of the academic calendar. So want to review a little bit on the academic calendar for the 24-25 school year. Provide those overviews for you and collect any feedback that you have on this particular draft 4 version of the academic calendar. So before we go any further with the calendar discussion, one element that I want to kind of discuss a little bit is I think the goal certainly is we want to maximize the amount of days that our students are here. We want to maximize the time that our students are here. We feel that our students being present in front of their teacher and with their peers is a learning experience that can't be replicated in any other fashion and format. We believe that there is an element of a hybrid learning model or a virtual learning model that may work for some students. But when you're here and you're signed in, that the value of in-person learning, it needs to be maximized. So with that, in this model, we built in more snow days, if you will, or weather inclement days or makeup days. And then we can certainly look at the utilization of a flexible instruction day after the utilization of these days. So here we go. The start of school, we're looking at the start of school. And again, inside of your packet, I believe at the back of your financials is the color draft calendar for your review. First day of school would still be August 21st, 2024, and I'm happy to say that that aligns right now with Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center, and aligns roughly with some of our sending schools, with our participating, with our county schools, excuse me. New professional induction series, and again, when I put these on here, these can certainly be flexible, but we're looking at 7, 8, and 12 of August, as well as teacher professional learning, the start of school, being 14, 15, 19, and 20. And again, those are flexible. Those are days that are contractual at this particular point, and those are days that certainly we can work in within the calendar. Those are kind of earmarked here at the beginning. Labor Day, we're looking at August 30th. For an Act 80 day, and that would be a professional learning day for teachers and staff. And the feedback we receive from some teachers is if that's a possibility, if we continue with trade days, to allow that day to be a trade day because it would allow for kind of a longer Labor Day. And right at the beginning of the school year, when we did our first trade day and some of the summer work that our teachers did, there was still a commitment to come in to prepare, still a commitment to get ready for school because you're in that mindset. And here to maybe kind of adjust and have that, what do they call that, the unofficial last summer, if that's the right word, I'm not sure. August 30th. September 2nd is Labor Day. Our offices will be closed and the district will be closed. And November 11th, Veterans Day. We want to honor Veterans Day, and we will be closed on that federal holiday. Winter and spring breaks, we're looking at November 27th to December the 2nd. School will resume on December the 3rd. December is a really short, detached month for the 24-25 school year. We would be looking at, the way the holiday falls. December 23rd until January the 1st, 2025, and our students would return on January the 2nd of 2025. We'd be looking at a spring break of April 16th, 17th, 18th, and 21st, with school resuming on April 22nd. Our weather or inclement weather makeup days would include April 16th, April 21st, March 28th, and March 31st, and April 17th. Those are 5 days. If we go past the 5-day weather mark, we would look at using flexible instruction days to try to maintain our academic calendar. Graduation and the end of school. Graduation would be Monday, June 2nd of 2025. Last student day would be June 3rd of 2025, and last teacher day would be June 4th of 2025.
Can you go back a slide?
Sure.
I'm not seeing the makeup days on this calendar. How are they marked?
The color coding's wrong. I just pointed that out to him
Oh,
here
okay,
real
because
quick
I only
that-
see 2 makeup days, the 16th and 17th.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
look down in the block over here. They're designated which ones they are, but they are just not identified correctly on the calendar.
Yeah, the 2 March days and April 21st should be blue with stars.
Correct.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Monday after Easter.
So why, I'm looking back at the calendar revision that we had last month. So why did we add the 31st of March as a day off? Because that wasn't a day off of school in the last calendar. And because then that bumps graduation till the next week.
That was to identify a makeup day and to have a built-in makeup day within our calendar.
Why can't we do what we used to do in the past, like there was a makeup day around Thanksgiving, which we used in the
Sure.
years past.
I mean, the rarity,
You're right, it's rare. And then we also had one that was around President's Day.
Sure, wherever you guys would like to put those, we certainly can.
Because I'm just wondering, because I'm not loving the idea of graduation on a Monday. But that's, I mean, it's not my kids anymore. I'm just saying, I just was wondering why we pushed to the next week.
I was just trying to look for days to build into a long month, have days where we know that the weather is sometimes inclement, and be able to take advantage of that long month and not have longer periods of time. So just looking to try to maximize the amount of days and still keep within a reasonable amount of time. But I also remember a conversation, I think that it was this group that had, about the kind of the saturation of the month of May, being very busy when it came to juniors and seniors, and looking to extend that a little bit. And therefore, I think it gave the best of both worlds, that we tried to accommodate a lot of different viewpoints that were extended back to administration to build this calendar.
But we do have new people now in this group that didn't talk about that. Because,
No,
my
we-
feeling is that I would rather still jam-pack May and graduate early.
No,
Yep.
and the reality is though, Phil, we actually just talked about that recently. That wasn't a different, that was just, it might have been a caucus meeting you missed.
Yeah, I mean, personally, Phil, I'll go on
Well,
record.
obviously,
I don't
see you're on the
agree.
fourth version.
Yeah, I personally, I agree with you, and I'm not a huge fan of this starting on the 21st, and now we're stretching out to June. We used to start on the 21st and get out before Memorial Day even. Now we somehow extended the school year almost 2 weeks. I don't,
Yeah, my personal opinion, if you're going to go back to this, we might as well not go back to school till after Labor Day. But, and I'm also just going to lay it out here because I thought we weren't going to talk about this till next week, but since it's in the calendar, I guess we are. I'm more of a fan of actually fixing our FID days than adding snow days.
I like
So now I'm thirding.
I like exactly what you proposed here, Dr. Fox. I think it works. I don't care if we graduate on a Monday.
I think there is a time and a place for an FID day. There's a time and a place also for a full snow day to let our kids play in the snow. I think those are important. I also, though, 100% sitting here, my number one goal is to get our kids in front of our teacher. And we have done, and our administration has done a great job of looking at flexible instruction days from last year, which was a different format and a different model for a lot of different reasons. And then this first FID day, but then also reflecting on what went well, what we needed to correct, what are some of the issues that we found, and being able to adjust those. But again, I'll go back to, I will adamantly say and firmly say that that doesn't replace instruction in front of our teachers.
I don't think anybody disagrees. I don't think anyone's jumping to the conclusion. When Phil says it, I don't think we're saying if it rains real hard, we use an FID day. But, like when there's snow and we've put technology in place in order to keep the kids safe, and people off the roads and all that stuff, I don't see a problem with using it, especially if we improve the content and the delivery of the instruction. That's not for me to do. I wouldn't know the first
But our
thing,
elementary
but
students don't have their iPads at home with them.
I understand
think
that. I
there's
agree.
fixes for that, though.
Yeah,
What is that?
If they call for snow, this isn't like when I was in high school. We went to school with chains on the buses. If they're calling for snow tomorrow, we're not going to school.
But what the
It's just
day-
reality.
right, but the
so
day
they
that-
could take stuff home on Monday,
okay,
knowing that it's supposed to snow maybe Wednesday and Thursday. So they have packets already at home. This conversation, we could be here till tomorrow night if you want to start talking about what I think is wrong with the FID days. We're sitting here, and instead of fixing a problem like we did during COVID with the virtual learning, we're going to just let the kids have a snow day now 5 days a year instead of fixing the problem with how we put out the FID days. That's my opinion, is that we're just kicking this can down the road. We're going to be the only school not using FID days.
I think maybe we don't need 5 days. And if we don't need 5 snow days built in, then we could get rid of that day in March and we could go back to graduating at the end of May. And then we would have 4 snow days. But what we're looking at is 4 days heavy snow, then the kids would be home, they would have a snow day, but they would make that up in face-to-face instruction. And then if we get a lot of snow and we miss more days, then we would use the FID days, which is perfect to me. There's no way anyone can convince me that a FID day, no matter how great you make it, is going to truly be an instructional day. It's a homework day. And it really, really hurts our kids, like out near where I lived, out near Paradise, the trailer park. My son was visiting a friend out there. He said, text me when you get here. Well, and I tried to, but when I got in the trailer park, I had no internet. So I kept having to drive down the road 5 miles to text him and say, I'm here, turning around, driving back, because the kids in that trailer park don't have internet. And so they can't get internet, they can't be doing the FID days. It really hurts our lower level kids, our special education kids who need to be with a teacher. And I think it really hurts our higher level kids who could need another day, like with true instruction, not just a day at home where we do homework and our teacher zooms in for an hour. I think there's value in that, but if we're looking at saying you get 4 snow days, we'll make them up. And then if it snows 36 inches and we miss 5 days, then we could start taking FID days. I think that's a perfect solution. I don't know why we would not do that. I don't know why we would use an FID day instead of a built-in snow day. I can't see any educational purpose for that.
I can agree with you on that, Mike. I'm not necessarily saying that I would do 5 FID days before I did a snow day or anything like that. I would just do a mixture of them. I would do 2 or 3 snow days and then do the rest FID days, because it seems ridiculous to me that we're going to start going to school in the middle of August and we're not going to get out till June. Because
And
we didn't
Phil,
have
and
snow days, Mike.
I appreciate you, there are those times when they're predicting snow, but our last FID day was on the Tuesday after Martin Luther King, and nobody went out on Friday thinking we were going to get snow on that following Tuesday. That kept us out of school.
You could have went on PennDOT's website, or you could have called someone who works for PennDOT, and they would have told you were getting snow on Tuesday because they were all told they were working overtime. So the fact that we didn't.
I get what you're saying, Mike, too, but just because that was the way we did it, 100 years ago when I was in school, doesn't mean it has to be the way it is now. And there is no argument against the fact that in-person is better than FID. I agree with that.
Then
But
why wouldn't we do that? Give me a reason why we wouldn't do 4 in-person days first before we start using FID days. What value is there? Why would we do that?
I'm not saying we wouldn't or shouldn't, but I will say that there are at least as many days where the kids are physically in this school and they are doing fun activities and doing things that are not sit down in front of your teacher instructional. So it's not really like if one of those days gets replaced by being remote learning, that's not up to the standard of what they would be receiving in person.
We have built-in funding all the time now
Well-
for social emotional well-being, and I get that.
So Mike, the one thing to think about, though, is what do they actually accomplish on those snow makeup days? Because if a family has already a vacation plan, they're not canceling it. So there are kids that are not coming to school, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm sure our kids not in school, those snow makeup days is way higher than you think it is.
But if you look at the calendar and you're talking about taking one day out, then you're moving the last day of school to Monday.
No, you're taking 2 days out.
Oh, did he say two?
Sorry.
I thought you
Well,
said
we
one.
would, we would
Okay.
have to take out 2 because they added,
Oh,
they
I
added.
heard him say one, so that's,
No, no,
that,
no.
that makes the last day of school Monday, but if you have two,
Right, so what I'm seeing is that in this new calendar, we added the 16th of April, which is the Wednesday before Easter, in from the version 3, and we added the 31st of March. If you take both of those days out, make your fourth snow day the 28th of March, and then you would be done on the same day as you were before. You would have 4 snow days. You would have the original 3 plus the 28th of March.
The 20th of March I already have circled. So in this version, the 20th must already be.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I'm okay with 3 snow days
Many
And then if that's the case, then we go back to draft version number 3, and with the philosophical idea that we take off the box, which is on there, that basically that states we'll use flexible instruction days first. And what we'll certainly say is we will use the 3 snow makeup days first and then apply our flexible instruction days thereafter. If we get approved, because it's an application that will happen again this summer.
Can I suggest? Can I suggest the 4th snow day be around President's Day? I mean, we have a half-day, Friday off, and Monday, which is a really long weekend. We never used to have that off. We always just had off President's Day. The 13th, 14th, and 17th. And it was a snow makeup day then.
Yeah, that 13th is our parent conference night, right? So you're saying Monday is President's Day, so the snow makeup day meeting, February 14th?
They're in school the 13th, right? It's evening conferences.
It is a prorated day.
Now it's a 2-hour early quit.
It's typically a day which is an early dismissal day
No,
for
it's
students.
a half-day,
Yes.
not an early dismissal. It's actually a half-day. Because we never used to have off for parent-teacher conferences, Deneen, in winter. Seems weird to me.
So, willing to take your feedback. Again, based on your initial feedback, I brought this version to you. I'm willing to have your feedback for the next version and see what direction. And I'm being serious, because again, we want this calendar. My goal of this calendar is to have natural breaks within this for our students. We also want to be able to maximize, as I stated earlier, in-person instruction days, but we also want to be mindful to make sure ahead of time that we at least get the start of school date out, because families right now are planning what next year looks like. They're much more organized than I am as a family, I'm sure.
Can I just say one thing? When you're saying about natural breaks, I understand, like, you want to have kids to be able to have a day to look forward to having off. But if we are using a snow day, then they had a day that they had off somewhere to get that snow day to be made up. It may not have been in the month of March. It might have been somewhere else. But it's not like we're making them go to school 5 extra days. They got off a day because of snow. So they had a mental, physical, whatever break for whatever day it was that caused us to have the makeup to begin with.
We all remember having that great snow day and going out and playing in the snow and getting frostbitten. No, just kidding. But going out, we remember that. It was fun. And we want to be able to replicate that fun. But we also remember, nope, you got to go to school, and then that feeling. I'm completely okay with all of those things. I just need a direction. Which days do you want to have makeup days? What's the number of makeup days? And therefore, I can get this calendar to you in a refined format.
Are we looking at a snow makeup day being February, what was it, 14th? Yes or no? Leanne, are you looking at February 14th? What's the 14th or 17th? The 17th is actually President's Day.
I'm still confused about the half-day for parent-teacher conference.
What's confusing about that?
Because now if you
Right.
Would it be earth-shattering to move the teacher conferences to the 6th? Or to the 7th?
No, I don't believe so. Typically, it corresponds right towards the end of that marking period. But no, I don't think it's earth-shattering to move it to
Well,
February
no,
6th.
you don't want to move that to a Friday night. And if you move it to the 6th, it's the exact scenario Leanne just described as being weird. They would have a half day and then go back the next day.
True.
Might
I
as well
don't
leave it.
understand why we have a half day for that. They're not planned parent-teacher conferences. My understanding was winter conferences were really only for those students that teachers reached out to, that they wanted to have parents come in for parent-teacher. They weren't like the fall. The fall, we had that day where we had the half day so parents could come in during the day, or those that wanted to come in the evening. But winter conferences were never like that.
This is really a pivotal time, I would say, especially for our elementary and some of our 5th and 6th grade, to talk about where we are at and some of the data assessment benchmarks that we have for the second half of the year, to see where they're at and to begin to plan. Sometimes there's really discussions in terms of what are we looking at for next year? What are some of the skills we need to work on? And inviting them in. It's a critical time not only for in-person conversations, but allowing our teachers that concerted time to make really important phone calls and outreach that needs to occur also. It's very valuable time, in my opinion, to be able to have that family and teacher connection and partnership, but carving out that time to be able to do that.
So, can I ask a question? If it's a staff and service day, you can't use that as a snow makeup day? Because it would screw everything up because you already had stuff scheduled? Is that a fair statement?
Probably.
Because why
Yes,
couldn't
I
you
believe
just
that's
use
a
the
fair
20th
statement.
of January? Chances are we're gonna have snow by then anyway.
Mr. Lehman, are you saying, so flip 13 to 20?
Switch 14 to 20.
And then I think the conversation was on the 13th, you're on a half prorated early dismissal day for conferences, and then you're back to school on the 14th.
No. We said that the 14th would be the fourth snow day,
Oh, okay.
but what if we make it the 20th of January? The first snow day? Because what I'm saying is there's no half day before that. And normally if we're gonna get a lot of snow, we normally have snow by the 20th.
That's a federal holiday on January 20th.
So we're looking at what dates? We're looking at what, March 31st, April 17th, and is that it, or are we looking at another day?
Wait a minute. No, you're looking at the 14th, the 28th, the 17th, and the 21st. Because we're gonna now go to school on the 16th, and we're gonna now go to school on the 31st.
One day after Easter to be a snow.
So our original 3 makeup days was March 28th, April 17th, and April 21st. If you want a 4th day, let me know which day, and we can add it, and that still keeps,
I'm sorry, can you say those dates one more
time? Yeah, no problem, sorry. March 28th, April the 17th, and April 21st. And the order of makeup was April 17th, March 28th, and April 21st, sorry.
And I think those 3 days are perfect, is what we asked for. I think the difference was we also want them to have off school the 16th, the 31st of March and the 16th, so that they can be done with school on the 30th.
And-
And then if you want to add another snow day, then it's got to be the 14th almost of February. And then, I mean, you could have a half day in the middle of the week if you need it for conferences. It would
February
just-
14th is a trade day on the calendar.
So that's a professional learning day. Basically, those who, again, yeah.
So that won't work, okay.
Draft calendar number 3 has,
We could do the 17th then.
I think historically, because it's Good Friday, I think it's just always been one that we've never touched, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you remember back when we had 5 snow makeup days, it was like you lost all of Easter vacation,
Except for Good Friday.
except for Good Friday, and we just had more time off then.
Yeah, probably not. I would, that would be a very tough day for us to staff. We would, yeah. Travel.
I hate to say this, but until 3 years ago, we went to school that day.
Yeah.
We didn't even have a half day most of the time.
If you want to make it a makeup day, and if that's the direction, we certainly can add that. Do you want that as the first one?
No, well,
It would have to be, right?
yeah, I guess. I mean, it's, you guys decide, I'm just throwing it out there. It used to be. But if you think.
We are trying to predict inclement weather, and traditionally, 3 days has been pretty significant, has been pretty sufficient, I should say. I don't know that. I could say this, and it could be, yeah, and that's probably my kiss of bad news right there, because anytime I try to predict anything is wrong. So looking at the 3 days, March 28th,
We'd go back to version 3.
it would be version 3. Okay.
Only difference being that we would be using those for
Correct.
5 days after.
That's correct. Last day of school is the 30th.
Was that on the 3 version? 'Cause
Yes, it is.
I never saw that one.
Yes, it is. And
At least Craig doesn't have to worry about reserving the forum, because we're doing it here on our field. So that's good.
He would have to do that 3 years ago.
absolutely. All right. Before we jump into budget, I just want to let's take a 5-minute stretch break, grab some fluids, and we'll come back into our budget overview. All right, well, wow, that was, well, we're going to go ahead and move on with overview number 2 of our budget preparation for the 24-25 school year. And as we said before, this is still, it's important, a high-level discussion at this point. As we continue to get and garner more information, we continue those internal discussions. We continue to prepare and plan. And really, as I go through this presentation, there's one aspect I want you to be thinking about as we go through it, is the one aspect at the end is we want your feedback on is to the format of which we're going to prepare information for you. And we're going to showcase 2 different models, and you can direct us as to which model that you want the information. So we'll go ahead and get started here. It's important anytime we look at our 24-25 budget and anything that we do, we always focus on our mission statement. And again, the high expectations, incorporating rigorous academic studies, utilization of progressive technology, and focusing on developing the whole student. That is our goal, that's our mission, that's our commitment, and that's what we bleed into our work on a daily basis. Our budget goals continue to enhance and maintain our curriculum offerings for our students. We want to continue to maintain and enhance our facilities, both at all 3 of our schools, our district office, and the property and grounds. We want to continue to work to provide a budget that is financially as responsible as possible. Our budget approach for 24-25, as we stated last time, and we continue to state, it's a zero-based budget. We're not rolling over ideas and aspects from last year. We're taking a deep look at what are those categories that are provided, not just from our buildings, but from all of our directors and all of our cost centers to make sure that it is a zero-based approach. What is needed in order to be able to deliver our goals? We review our expenses from previous years to determine more actual expenses and trends. So if we're seeing in a usage in a particular area, we want that to be replicated inside of the budget. So it's not just a rollover and a tweak, but an actual and looking at real-time data to be able to make those adjustments. Items and areas that are not rolled over, as we said, from previous years, and we want to make sure that it aligns with our instructional goals. Budget constraints. The 2024 State of Education Report really aligns, and that is a widespread study that was conducted by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association in conjunction with several agencies and organizations. It is on the website, you can see that, but this study really does show and portray exactly what we are talking about and have seen historically to be some constraints. Number 1 is cyber charter school payments. I was happy to hear in the governor's budget address today that he is a proponent and looking for Congress to be able to pass some cyber charter reform. It is needed. When you look at our actual deficit, it aligns to our payments. While you'll see our enrollment has began in cyber charters to plateau, payments continue to rise. That is because of the flawed formula that is derived out of the school code that is archaic and outdated and is costing taxpayers significant money. Remember, as a taxpayer, there is no such thing as a free cyber charter school. You pay for it. And I'm not here to say it's bad, and I'm not saying it's not good for some students, because for some it may be. What I'm saying is that you as a taxpayer, that commercials that they have are not true. It is not free. It's paid for by taxpaying dollars. Your taxpaying dollars. Special education. Special education has not been funded as it was intended to be funded by Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, by the federal government. It was to be funded 100%. That has not been the case since IDEA became a law. We continue to see, and our job is to serve the needs of students, not to look at the price tag associated with it, but to provide their needs. Utilities. Utilities continue to rise. We continue to explore cost savings mechanisms associated with our utilities. But we know that utilities are they're variable, they're on the open market, and they fluctuate. Salaries and benefits and PSERs are fixed costs that are associated with contractual obligations and our requirement and associated with the Pennsylvania State Educators Retirement System and our mandated contributions to that program. Inflation costs are real. And I'll be honest, when I did these budget constraints, these should look very similar to last year because they are. And they replicate what all of our school districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are facing. Here's an excerpt from that 2024 report. The purple at the bottom shows historic enrollment of all school districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for cyber charter. You'll see on the average that there's a dip. The gray color on the top is indicative of the percentage increase in payments. So while while enrollment is going down, tuition based on the school law and on the school code continues to rise. So anybody listening to this, again, cyber charter reform is a good law. Cyber charter reform will not bankrupt cyber charter schools. It will put them on the same playing field that we have. The next is special education expenses outpace revenue. You'll see in the red, it's state funding. You'll see in the top of that red is the federal funding. You'll notice federal funding didn't even come close to what was promised when IDEA was first came into existence, and then the special education supports that you'll see here as it continues to rise. As we transition and look at our budget, it's important to note a few items that are coming that are going to be new that you're going to see. The number one is marching band uniforms. Marching band uniforms, our marching band boosters, the parents, have done an excellent job of realigning buttons, hemming, removing, replacing zippers. But you can only do that so many times before they are just not operational. The next is pole vault mats and covers. Pole vaulting is a particular one of the events in track and field, and it's an incredible event, but it's one that you want to have a safe and certified equipment to be able to do that. A replacement gaiter, part of our replacement plan for maintenance, new sports equipment and uniform replacement cycles. That includes track and field, which is up in the cycle. That also includes an addition of 2 sports that was not in the cycle, but we asked to move them in the cycle this year, which includes men's soccer, boys soccer, and girls soccer. And the reason for that is because of some of the uniforms. Number one, when they purchased the uniforms, there wasn't enough uniforms. That number really was a shorter number. And therefore, as the uniforms began to be lost, replaced, or just not returned, we began to see some of our athletes not being in the same uniforms, and that can't happen.
Quick question, Dr. Fox. So there should be money already in the budget for uniform replacement, right? So is this $51,000 above what should already annually be in the budget? Or is this 51,000 high, but maybe we have 30,000 in there already? Do we know what that is?
Yeah, really great question. So if we're looking at comparable to last year's budget to this year's budget, yeah, I didn't compare the two yet. Okay. So when we do a zero-based budget, what is the need and why is there a need? And I just didn't want this number to come out and jump out at us as to why. So you get a chance to see it firsthand. But yes, comparable to last year to this year, it's going to be a little larger because you have a bigger team that's being added there. Track and field is a big team. It encompasses boys and girls. That's a large number. Not a costly uniform, but it's a big group.
But I thought we had them broken out so that the cycle fell, that it kind of still was pretty much zero from year to year. I mean, obviously it's going to be increase in uniforms, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
pricing, but
Yeah,
I
when-
think the numbers are probably not going to be that far off, or they shouldn't be.
Yeah, but I did move. It's important to note, we did
Soccer
move
and-
soccer from the cycle.
They're being added early this year to the cycle.
Not if we don't approve it.
Well, yeah, that's just my recommendation. Like anything else, everything I put forth is just a recommendation, 100%.
I think I got the answer to the question. So this isn't really a new budget item because we already have a budgeted item, line item for sports uniform replacement. But that number may be a little bit higher than normal because we're bringing in the cycle of soccer and boys and girls soccer early.
Yeah, that's fair. Yes. Middle school TV studio equipment, managed detection response, information technology.
I'm sorry, is this okay time to ask questions?
Oh, yeah.
But is this a new, new equipment or replacement of equipment that's being outdated, or how is that?
Yeah, equipment that is outdated, but enhancing the equipment based upon feedback, recommendations. Our goal at the middle school is to provide them an experience within that studio and be able to use it, but then have our students be able to take those skills and transfer them into the high school with the various different classes and programs. So it will be a scaled down version compared to what the high school has, but it will be newer, updated equipment that will function in the capabilities that we want it to be able to be done. Please note that anytime we put these in here, we also look for and try to secure any grants that can be procured for that. But again, sometimes grants are successful and sometimes they are not. Sometimes they come with entanglements, and we want to make sure that that doesn't necessarily be the case.
So do we know if that is like replacement of all of the equipment, or could they replace certain parts at other times? And can we move this into the cafeteria and let the cafeteria fund pay for this?
Dr. Jones, we are looking at replacing not all of it, so using some existing equipment to help with it, and then I've actually gone back and asked for additional quotes with less equipment just to try to bring that cost down.
All right, and rolling right along, the high school sound system improvements for the cafeteria, laptops, and roof weatherproofing treatment system at the schools. And you'll see that as we get into the last presentation of the night, you'll see a capital improvement plan. That will include a multitude of different needs throughout our facilities as we look for that large-scale plan that you had asked for. Overview of estimated budget expenses at this time. Again, this is still the 75,000 foot level as we begin to come down and land that plane and give you those budget actual details. It's about $38,519,340. Again, the drivers being cyber charter payments, continued rising costs. Transportation, you'll see some rising costs as well. And as we continue to work towards those. Overview of projected estimated revenue is $34,993,061, and it's important to note that as we prepare this budget, we also included a proposed Act 1 index adjusted tax increase built in, and as upon your direction, it can be removed at any point, but it's there for illustrative purposes to show what the offset of that revenue would be, and our projection of revenue is based upon the 2023 assessment data that we received from both Perry and Dauphin counties. Historic millage review, and again, I can send this presentation to you as well to be able to review in more detail as we just kind of gloss over this for the first time. This is really interesting as well. This came as a screenshot from that 2024 report, which I found really interesting. Inflation hits. 98% of school districts throughout the 500 say that inflationary constraints impacted their budget. And if they had to force tough choices throughout the budget, that's 65% said they're going to have to raise local property taxes, while 51% have said they're going to draw from fund balance. as well as offsetting some building renovations. And we've done some of that and made some tough decisions as we continue to look at what we can postpone, what we need to do, and what we need to be able to do to maintain safe environments for our students. Overall, of January of 2024, it's a $3,525,820 deficit at this point. And again, I stress that does include, though, an Act 1 adjusted tax increase at this point. Looking at our fund balance projections, 22-23, it was estimated to use $2.4 million. Based upon what we just received, that is not necessarily the case. So this slide will be readjusted, which will readjust all these particular other numbers here as well. And again, when we had built this, we didn't get the audit number, so nothing is official until we get the official audited numbers. Historic budget yearly expenses, you'll see some of the trends throughout the different historic parts in time. So this is where the interactive portion happens, is where you have really a lot of different options and formats. But format 1 is the format that you're used to, right? It's the format that has the long code. Oh, I'm sorry. Format 1 is I apologize. Format 1 is going to give you this intuitiveness of looking at the function expense code, and it's going to allow you to drill down. So for instance, if you click on, and we'll see here in a second, you're going to click on special education as an example. You'll be able to click on emotional support, and then you'll be able to click on and see, here are the expenses under this function. Here are the salaries associated with the persons and personnel that's associated with that. You'll be able to then take that, make any adjustments you want to, and question those items as we have in the past by function, and put those in our question and answer sheets. But then also what you're going to be able to do is, as we get into next year's reports, and you look at categories, you'll be able to know exactly what's in that category, how it's being spent, and have those considerable controls, and that control to be able to cross-reference the two. Or format 2, we plug them into the spreadsheet, and we go line by line as we have historically. Let's drive a little bit and take you on a test ride. Here's the demonstration. So if we were to go to emotional support and we click on that plus tab, you'll be able to see here is some of the professional services.
Small touch. Back to budget, please. A little, there you go. The plus by right there. Yep. Right there. Not working?
So I think in here you'll have to sign in. But while we're doing this, it definitely has some intuitive format to it. And the reason we want to get this out in front of you now and ask is because it is a tremendous amount of work for our business office. So if this isn't a format you want, we want to know so we can not really put that sweat equity, if that's the right word to use, into it, and then give you what you want. Because ultimately, this is your budget, and we want to provide the information in the format and fashion that best answers the questions that you have and provides you with the best amount of information to be able to make informed decisions.
So this,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, no worries. I'll tell you what, we'll go on, and then we'll come back to this. Oh, okay, great. Sorry about that. That was me. I had this thing locked down.
So I came into the budget process last year, and there were approximately 983 line items that you had to go through. And it really didn't allow for an understanding of what the costs were associated with the functions. So I asked myself, what would I want to see if I were a board member? And so that's how this was derived, to be able to give you information based upon the functions that we have. We were supposed to show this to you at the last meeting. I had passed out that long sheet of paper with the different color coded on it. And so what we're hoping that you get out of this is you're going to be able to see, for example, in special education, what are the costs for life skills? What are the costs for hearing impaired, visually impaired, speech? So you have a better understanding as a board of where the money is being spent. So if you go to the emotional support tab and you click on the plus sign, it's going to give you all of the expenses under emotional support. So at the elementary school, you see salary and benefits, professional services, supplies, field trips, travel, books, print and media dues and fees, and miscellaneous expenses. And it's pretty much the same categories for the middle school and high school. So if we go back to one of the highlighted areas and she clicks on salary and benefits, it's going to take you to the salary and benefits for the elementary school. You scroll up a little bit, please. Oh, too far.
And this is used for illustrative purposes only, because Mrs. Bressie did such a great job in her budget.
So there, for example, you can see in the elementary school, Ms. Cunningham, her salary and benefits, the 2 aides, there are 3 vacant positions. So it goes through the detail of what's under emotional support, salary and benefits for the elementary school. And there's the same listing for the middle school and for the high school. So it allows you to drill down and see what the exact costs are. So if we back out of there and go back to budget, and you hit supplies, for example. Supplies is going to take you down to the point where you can see what are they spending the money on. Here's the $450.53. Here's what the teachers wanted to buy with that money in supplies. So you're going to be able to drill all the way down till you see the exact items that are being purchased or that want to be purchased. Benefits of next year are that when I give you this report for the caucus, we're going to know what items were in those budgeted line items. We're going to know those amounts. So then we can compare, well, this is what we said we were going to buy, this is what we did buy, oh, here's the extra, this is why we're over, or we didn't buy this, this is why we're under. So you'll have a complete record of everything that was in the budget to be purchased by line item, by category.
Does a teacher or anyone, if they decide they're not going to buy kinetic sand, but they wanted to buy something else, are they able to do that? Or is because it's been budgeted down to that micro level, are they required to buy kinetic sand?
No, they would
No.
not be. They would be able to
Okay.
go to their principal and say, I wanted to use this, I've changed my mind, I think this is better, may I buy this? And then that's a discussion that they'll have, you know, comparing costs and whatnot.
Now, if it was
How does that-
$10 to $200, the answer would be, let's look at, well, the answer would probably be a hard no, but where else can we get the funds from, and why do you need a program? What is the need of this item, and how does it serve the students in the program?
So in terms of going into the next year then, I'm just using that as an example, how does that work for you if they don't buy kinetic sand and making that comparison to the next year? Does that make sense?
The advantages are that we should know right away, because the budget process should work as the principals give us their information, we review it with them, it comes to you and you pass it, and these are the items that they can buy. So then we'll send this back to the building principals and department heads, and that's where they're going to generate their purchase invoices from. So that's when they're going to say, hey, I don't want this, I don't need this. That's where that conversation's going to have place. But it'll still be a budgeted amount, we just won't spend it unless they make alternate arrangements or, as Dr. Fox said, they have that discussion.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. If they bought something else, does that mess with your ability?
No,
account.
we would go in and change what it is that they were buying.
If I could just say it, so I have, what you showed was the supply list for the special ed. So when they order that, the approval comes to me. So then I have a copy of that list. So then I can go in and say, okay, look, you didn't budget for this on your list, what are you taking the place of type of thing? And then I can change it and then forward that on to the business officer to be changed in the master budget.
Okay.
And another benefit of this is that we have decided what the codes are ahead of time and how it's going to be classified. So between the time of the budget preparation and the actual sending of the purchase order, it's going to be that same item. So it's not going to be in a different category, different class, and you're going to have the ability to go back and look and, see what was purchased, what wasn't purchased, and how it compares to the budget.
Will we also then be able to have a year-over-year comparison, which is something I have always wanted in our budget, but because of the way that they've been done, we haven't been able to do that.
I don't have any detail other than the categories of where the money was to be spent. I don't have any of that detail. But going forward.
No, I meant going forward.
Right, going
Yeah.
forward, yes, it'll all be here, that you'll have it to compare year over year.
Yeah. Because I think that would be helpful. I know in years past, we've been trying to look down the budget and we would see something go up in amount, and then I know it was because of a coding issue, but we could never see how that compared to what was budgeted the year before, or how it was spent the year before, or even 2 years back.
This
Yeah.
should solve that problem.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, too, one of the things we talked a lot about, too, was the grossed up, the rolled up numbers. And what does that include in these rolled up numbers? Now you can drill down.
So next year, there'll be 2 columns. There'll be what you spent in budget. Okay. And yeah, I think that'll do what we've been asking for 16 years.
It has to be a full, we want a firm commitment because of the hours that our budget office is spending building this, is a lot. And then here's the traditional format that you've had, what's the line item format, which honestly, in terms of preparation, is a little simpler. We plug in, we remove, we put the deltas in, and the description. I'm not saying there's not a level of detail that goes in it. What I'm saying is a little less intuitive, and a little less complicated.
But is this one of those things, maybe Mr. Holmes, you could say, yeah, it's going to kind of stink now because this is going to take a lot of work, but futuristically, will it be easier for everybody involved? Because I'm wondering, is there benefit outside of just the board looking at this for people building a budget even? Right.
The detail last year for that number.
And then once it's built this year, will there be as much legwork next year? Or is the legwork coming in the initial building of the minutia's, building out that?
Once the framework is going to be mostly this year. So it is going to be heavy intensive labor to get it done this year, but then the shell will be there for future years. But I guess the question for me comes back to, do you want to know how much you spend in special ed? Do you want to know how much you spend in sports? Do you want to know how much you spend in alternative education, adult education? Do you want to know that kind of information? If you do, then this will certainly answer that for you.
I think it seems to be beneficial for more than just us. Yeah, I like it. I mean, I understand, but that's,
So thumbs up, no, line items. I don't like any format.
Presentation number 1.
Question, if we end up, getting a new business manager, eventually we will. You won't stay forever. But what happens every year we get a new business manager and every year they code things differently? We've been experiencing that for 4 or 5 years. And so we can't, every year comparing one budget to another is like comparing apples to oranges. If you are to create something like this, is it feasible then for whoever comes in as our next business manager to say, we want you to use this and we want you to code things the way that they are coded based on this? Or is that a feasible thing? Because I do like this a lot, but I'm really interested in some type of consistency from year to year, because we have not had that for a while.
Well, I think the first and foremost, and I don't mean to speak for you, is you as a collective group tell me as the superintendent how you want the budget delivered. And if this is the format you like moving forward, regardless of if myself or Mr. Holmes are sitting in these seats, that's the direction you will drive. In terms of how professionally somebody wants to put something in a category or code, that is up to their professionalism and their discussion as to where they feel it fits. Because sometimes the categories are broad enough where it could go in multiple places. But yeah, if you like the format, despite who's in these seats, you can drive.
I guess, I'm sorry, I don't know that I was clear, but okay, say, yes, we like, and I like this a lot. I just, it's amazing, actually. It seems like an awful lot of work, and I appreciate that your staff and you are doing that. So then the following year, if we opt to do this, the following year, would you be able to lay the next budget right alongside this budget so we can compare from year to year how much money was spent under certain codes? I guess to be more specific in my first question, so we can compare apples to apples.
Yes, you could.
Okay, excellent.
All right, so.
go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were going to go. All right, so 2 things. So if you go back to the other one and the pencils were on there for $14.99, you don't necessarily have to go back. But let's just say they didn't want to buy the pencils for $14.99, they bought pens for $14.99. Does that then become another line? Or do you just, because it wouldn't carry over from year to year if you bought pens when it said pencils?
But it'd be supplies.
It would fall into the supplies category, yes. And then we could go back and look at the detail of what was in there.
Yeah. That's my first question. My second question is, and just because Mike said it too, I don't want you to think that you can't come back to us in 6 months and say, this is way too much work. Because it could be way too much work to break out any invoice to do what you're saying you're gonna do. And I know you're gonna sit here and say, but I want you to know that if you come back to us in 6 months and say we can't do this anymore, we're gonna kind of understand.
So the look behind the curtain is that they give me the information in an Excel spreadsheet. I put the account codes in or verify the account codes they gave me. So it's really a matter of sorting and placing, if that makes sense. So once I have the account codes in, I can sort them and put them anywhere I want.
I'm saying once you start adding actual costs, if it becomes too much to break down the actual cost to each line number, the whole way down to pencils, so that we can compare from one year to the next. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm just wondering, I don't want you to 6 months from now to be like, oh my God, I need like 3 more people because we can't even, we got to edit in pencils 45 places.
Three people would be good. So next year, you would see a supplies amount. You wouldn't see like a pencil, right? You would simply see a supplies number. Last year,
You're not going the whole way down to the pencils.
for the budget for the year that you were in or working on, yes,
But
but
we wouldn't see the breakdown from the year before, we would just see a total.
just see the total.
Okay, that's not what you explained to Leanne, or what I thought you explained to Leanne.
Yes.
I thought you were going down to the
That
pencil.
actually makes me feel a little bit better, that we're not making, it's like, yeah, like.
You're going to
as a
one screen
teacher,
before.
you
Yes.
said to me,
Yeah.
I had $50 in supplies, and you said to me, you mean I need to tell you how many pencils I'm gonna buy this year? Like, all right, that makes me feel better, actually. But you're saying that in hindsight, you'll be able to say, hey, you bought 50 pencils, or you bought 10 sand, or you bought whatever. Because the invoice, you will have that.
Yes.
And you'll be able to look, but for the future, that'll still be just supplies.
Correct. So that one screen that showed you supplies and the dollar amount, you'll see that next year, but you won't see the detail behind it unless you went and opened up the prior year's budget program and looked at the supplies. Yeah, we're not going to go that far, but we're going to go with the total for that particular supplies.
Yep, but if we saw a 300% difference, then we could inquire, and you could look, and you would know.
Could
this
open
is
this
why.
back up for the previous year, yes.
That's perfect.
Now, is there any category that you would break down? Like, so for instance, let's just say uniform comes in as a number of $60,000, uniform refresh. In the current budget, in the budget proposed for next year, would we be able to click on that with this format and say,
By sport.
5,000 of this is going to track and field, 15,000 of this is going to soccer? Would
Correct.
we be able to do that,
By sport, yes.
Correct.
even though it's proposed?
Correct.
Not what was purchased? Okay.
All right, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Looking at some of our next steps, Mr. Holmes and his team will have everything ready for next week. No, I'm just teasing. It'll be March caucus meeting is our goal, to have that intuitive electronic format available to you. And we'll also have the lines that we will be available for questions as well. Special budget tentative meeting dates. I'd like to get out in front of these to mark your calendars. Let's go ahead and we can mark these down. We can always cancel if not needed and add additional if needed. And upon your approval, we will begin to advertise these because they have to be advertised, of course, right? March 19th. And I'd like to put an end date because obviously I go long-winded. So I want to be mindful of time. And we can have a set point and an ending point. And with this format, we can also tackle and say, let's do special education and technology as a function on this particular day. Then we can tackle instruction, which is a big one, on this day. So we can break it down by function and go over those categories on specific dates to be able to tackle. March 19th, March 26th, obviously I love March, right? And April the 3rd. And additional meetings as needed.
Yes,
All
those
right.
dates are good.
Perfect, we'll get these advertised.
April 3rd, our caucus meeting for April as well.
It is not. It's the following week is caucus. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Tuesday, April 2nd is Makeup Day. That's coming off of our spring break. We are, we'll have it the following week, the following Tuesday.
Board meeting would be the 16th.
That's correct. Of April. All right, let's go ahead and have some next steps in our discussions, looking at our continuation of talking about debt service, talking about some of our decisions that we need some direction on. But before we go into that, I want to be mindful that you had asked us before to look at a facilities plan that includes multiple years. You'll see that this facilities plan that's in your folder is a draft copy for discussion purposes only. It takes out from 24 all the way to 2034 and looks at capital reserve as well as it looks and breaks down by building some particular needs. Now, it's important to note that these address facility needs, not necessarily some of our curriculum and instruction needs. I think it's important that you take a look at this, and we don't have to take a deep dive in it this evening, but I do want you to take a look at this, as this is something that you had asked for. You'll notice a couple of items on here as well as we prepare. We're preparing for the future in certain items, which continues to be a roof replacement, continues to be a boiler replacement in the event of a need, because again, when we look at the age of our buildings,
Sorry, I'm sorry. Did you say we're going to continue to discuss possible roof replacement?
Yes,
I
that-
was going to ask because one of the items listed earlier was $400,000 to patch the roofs. So I thought perhaps we had already made a decision not to replace the roofs. So can you elaborate on that a little more?
Sure. So the part of our capital project plan is to continue with some of our, we are at the point where we need to continue with some of our roof treatment, which roofs at some point, and there's certain sections that we go through, are no longer in warranty, and those roofs are, need to be treated. We look through the different areas, and we have a plan that goes in multiple years to be able to make sure that our roofs are still staying in good condition. That is part of the phase that we included in the big ticket items, or new ticket items, if you will, for the 24-25 budget for next school year. And it is included also in this plan as well.
So I may just be dense here. So if we're looking at possibly replacing the roof, right? That's a possibility. I mean, if we know we're gonna have to replace the roof in like 4 years, should we be spending $400,000 a year next year on a roof that we're gonna replace in 4 years? I guess, do we know enough about it to have that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at different sections of roofs, these are finalizing some of the areas that have not been treated in a long period of time. There is a lifetime that you can treat a roof and put that treatment on it. We are not quite there in some of those areas yet. So we have the ability to continue to apply that technology to the roof without a full gut and replacement, if that's what you're asking.
I don't think it is. I assume when we replace a roof, we would replace the entire roof.
Probably not.
So we don't need replace.
What we've done thus far is not replace any roofs here since that I know of.
Right.
We've treated roofs with a technology that goes over top, which is kind of a roll-on, spray-on technology that utilizes the current roofing and protects it for a period of 12 or a period of 25, depending on what type of material you use. A full roof replacement includes removing and ripping off the current existing, exposing the insulation, seeing if the insulation is a full roof replacement between, $2 to $3 million, depending on the size of the roof. A school like this, a lot of pitches, a lot of different topographies and changes. I wouldn't even sit here and tell you what I think that cost would be.
So it probably depends, Mike, on when it was put on. And I would guess that they've replaced pieces of the roof in the past. So one part of the roof might wear out 10 years from now, and one part might not wear out for 20 years.
I'm pretty sure this whole roof was replaced in 2002. Or at least I know part of it was, because I was standing in the office when the roof in the Perdix wing caught fire, because they were working on it. And so I don't know if they replaced the whole roof. That's when they did the major renovation. But I assume at some point when we decide, yes, we're going to have to replace this roof in 5 years, then we're going to stop putting money into patches. I guess that's literally.
That's a really great question.
That was my question.
That's a great question. And that is something we can talk about now. What do we do to maintain our current facilities? Or do we begin that process of discussion of what a new building looks like for a middle school, high school combination, and begin that planning process so in 8 years, we're ready to go? So if you look at some of the needs within the building, and again, we don't have to do that exercise right now, but look at over time, what curriculum-wise, what facilities-wise, and what overall improvement-wise, are we ready at that point to consider a combination building that may be able to address both needs of both buildings within the combination school? And again, that's a really large discussion, not a 10 o'clock at night discussion, but something I want to put on the horizon because certainly it can impact our decisions moving forward and impact our preparations moving forward. That as a board, we can certainly begin that process that certainly will outlast and can outlast a lot of the needs within the district and begin that process. So
And
there's
that-
a lot of steps that occur
And that
in
was
there.
that was my original question. Should we, and I don't think we can hold off too long, if we're going to budget $400,000 to put tape on our roof, not to downplay that, and if we're looking at in 5 years putting a new, at what point should we stop patching? Like, do we know that now, or do we just patch a year again, like we have been, and then give ourselves time to investigate that further, or?
There will continually be needs that we will need to address in this building regardless of decisions that we make in planning to be able to still have a safe environment for our students. But there are decisions we can make, and if we wanted to continue to look outwards, I mean, it's as simple as saying 25 years is not the type of roof we want to put on, because knowing full well that we want to make some decisions within the 10-year mark, then we put in a lesser product. So those are the types of conversations that we can swing and have that we really, as a collective group, need to have some good workshops to really take a deep dive into, some field trips, which would be fun to see, and some conversations we can have on what that might look like. But you're exactly right. You're exactly right. There are some things we're going to need to continue to repair. There are some things that will fail, that need to be replaced, that just can't be neglected, that will need to be overhauled. But you know, when you look at certain aspects that, you know, when we think about a full gym replacement that can only be sanded down a couple of more times, that's something, you know, as we build out fiscally and responsibly, would include into a new build. So, you know, again, I think, you know, one of the discussion points was for us to look at a facilities plan. And I think that it's important to take a look at some of the needs, as well as some of the things we can fix versus some of the things we can delay if, in fact, it's a collective group to begin to plan for what that might look like. And there are multiple steps necessary in that, but our commitment could be to continue to plan for that now.
Just to go over this, excuse me, document with you so you understand that there are a couple of quirky things. Excuse me. The items that you see highlighted in yellow were those items that Dr. Fox just acknowledged that are large dollar items that are coming down the horizon. So best practices would say, let's set money aside every year for those items, and that way, in the year that we have to do that, we don't have to come up with that large amount of money, we've set it aside. So the items in yellow are add future projects budgeted. And then the line item up at the top that says add capital reserve budget annual, when we talked about credit rating a couple times, that's something that a credit rating agency would look at. Are you building up your capital reserve, or is it staying the same, or are you decreasing it? And best practices, again, would say that you should probably set aside so much money each year for that. Again, those amounts are up to somebody to determine if you choose to do that. So as you come down this, beginning balance capital reserve, then less expenditures. So the items that are listed that are not highlighted, for example, in 24-25 equal to $4,229,000. No emergency projects that we know of right now. And I have in here a line that says loan net proceeds. So if you wanted to pay for all of those items, the $4,229,000, we'd have to come up with that money somewhere, and it could be from loan proceeds. So if you were to take the $4,229,000, the $280,000, the $250,000, and you were to add them up, you would need to make a contribution to capital reserve in the amount of $4,759,000 in order to not deplete your capital reserves and add $530,000 to it. Does that make sense? So if you go along the ending capital reserve, you'll see that each year it increases by the $530,000, the money you're setting aside in the annual annual increase and the future projects budgeted.
How was the number derived of $100,000 a year for track surface replacement?
It was a rough quote that we received from Trek, I'm trying to think of the name of Target Sports. The idea behind it is it can only be resurfaced so many times. So the next time they would come in and they would do a core sample, and they would see the underlayment, which needs to be milled. And if it can't be milled, which is the pavement underneath the track, it would be a full replacement, which would drive that number up.
Okay, so
Yep.
when we resurfaced
That
in
was not a,
2020,
that was not.
like $250,000, I think,
Yep,
if I remember right.
That
So
is
that's not
correct.
what you're talking about here.
no.
Okay.
That would be because of the fact that it can only be resurfaced X amount of times, and we're there, it would require,
I mean, is it really that much, that expensive? Like, do you remember what the number was? Like ballpark?
$1 million?
It was close to $1 million
Yeah.
was his estimate.
Yeah. You know, you look at the labor, you look at the pavement, the cost of blacktop, and it's a rough estimate right now.
Okay.
You know, without bringing somebody in and getting that actual number. It's a big track, it's 8 lanes.
Would that have to be done 24, 25?
That I'm not really sure. We'll have to get him into to get an understanding of where
Okay.
we're at. We do know there's some fading on the
'Cause
track,
they
so
just
probably
redid
would
it
need to
in
be
2020.
repainted. Correct.
Okay.
Yep. There's some you know, and you look at the drainage associated with it as well. So what's underneath is probably more valuable than what's above. And then we'll need to look at possibility within that framework before then of the repainting of it. That just fades over time.
So
That's
you're-
not millions.
So in going back to Chester, when you said in this thing, the 530, so you're saying that every year we would have a line item in our budget that would be for future projects and another one for capital reserve?
That would be the recommendation of best practices, whether or not you would choose to.
And do we have anything in our budget like that now?
No.
Okay.
In fact, I don't think anything has been added to the capital reserve for a number of years. At one point that I saw the data for, it was at like 4.5 million, and it slowly decreased over time.
Yeah, we've certainly been taking out strategic projects such as our lighting project and our camera project were things that we utilized capital reserves funds from. But we have not budgeted in the budget to remove items from the budget just to use capital. We've kept pretty steady with our capital, but we've not increased it by any means. And the capital reserve is certainly set aside, right, as an investment in the event that there would be a situation where we would need, that would not be covered under insurance, and a situation where we would need to replace something immediately without having to look at other loan proceeds to be able to procure.
So when you say the loan net proceeds, is that presuming if we end up borrowing now? And if we do that, is that addressing all of the projects that are in the 24, 25?
Yes, you would have to borrow, well, you wouldn't have to, I apologize. So the annual capital reserve contribution of $4,759,000 would pay for the $4,229,000 of projects. It would put $280,000 away for the future projects in yellow, and then an additional increase in the capital reserve budget of $250,000. Does that make sense?
For this year?
For this year, yes.
Okay, so if we did that, and I think going back to Mike's point, and we decide we are going to coat the roof, we're not going to be dealing with replacing, is that money that we would borrow going to be taking care of the $495 for the roof replacement, the roof coating for this year?
Yes.
Would that then lower our deficit on our budget by $500,000? Because that was one of the items that, didn't you have on there that was going to be? Okay. Is there anything else that's on here that's in our budget for this year that we would alleviate from the budget? That's like the gator or something like that?
No. No, there is not.
Bleacher replacement,
That is not added to the budget.
what's not on the budget?
That is correct. And really, those conversations, I think, at the beginning, it's what is needed to be done now, and if there's an appetite to begin to plan, then what can be shifted to begin to plan for new construction versus addressing some of what I would call the low-hanging fruits that need to be done. So what is a must versus what can be delayed, maintained, while we continue to fiscally plan out if that's a desire and a will. If not, then certainly these are some of the categories that we believe that are important as we look through. And it's important to note that this wasn't just derived from just observation. It was derived from the MEP reports that we received from Crabtree, from independent reports we also received from some other providers that came in, and were able to provide us some information, as well as our Director of Buildings and Grounds, who understands these buildings fairly well, as well, because he lives and breathes and pretty much is the building whisperer, if that's the good word to use, because he does understand them and has seen throughout time. There's some things that were also involved in your previous capital plan that have been shifted that needed to be included, as well as the elementary carpet replacement phases that we're in, as well as some of the other items that just, like me, get old and need to be replaced and looked at because they just wear out over time and there's a life expectancy of those particular items.
As a, for lack of a better word, living document, is there anything else that you'd like to see changed on here? Or does this sort of give you the framework that we could use going forward into the future in discussing capital projects?
I can answer that. I might not be reading this correctly, but in the past, we've looked at like a five-year plan. Like, this would be done on year one, and we're looking to do this year two, year three, year four, year five. And it doesn't, maybe I'm not seeing a whole lot being done on the other years. Do you know what I mean?
When this was created, I basically took Dr. Fox's presentation to you before. These are the items that need to be done, and put them all in year one, and let you decide what year you'd want to move them to. We're not saying that they would all have to be done this year, but here's the list of items that we know of and are aware of. In fact, we met today with the roofing people, and that's why our roofing number changed. But is this something that you can use and move forward items out into the future in whatever year you would like?
Yeah, I think to answer your question, step one would be perhaps discussing items and which year they should be moved to. I think it's interesting, it's just a note, like when we had the feasibility study, the building that they wanted to perhaps tear down and replace is the elementary school. And it's the one that we have the least amount of things projected to do any work on. But we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of work on pipe and insulation in other buildings.
Yeah, and the feasibility study, when they looked at some of the renovations and add-ons, was based on some of the deficiencies that were addressed in that building. This isn't addressing some of those deficiencies that were pointed out during the walkthrough, such as the gym was being too small and not being able to house all the student body or half the student body for an assembly. That doesn't exist at the elementary school. They don't have a place to bring the student body for an assembly without walking up to the high school. Number two, remember there were not there was classrooms without natural light. So what the architect tried to do was build out opportunities for that. They also looked at how to create what I would consider to be a centralized location for administrative offices. So they tried to do different designs, and each time there was a different design, there was a different rendering associated with how that would look. So yes, some of those designs were to address some of that feedback, but this capital projects plan addresses more systems and needs than it does the holistic look at what are some of the major building deficiencies, if we were to ask our building leaders what some of the needs and wants within those classrooms and within the schools. That's not necessarily in this particular plan.
So I don't know when we discuss this again, but I would like to know a little more information, like, and not tonight, of course, probably, but the career/tech ed, like, what exactly are we looking at and where, like the dressing staging room, what are we looking at? What does that involve? You know, and, you know, the geothermal pumps, that seems like an awful low price. And is that going to involve digging up? And how do we know which pumps to replace? They were all put in about the same time. So, but this is not the time, but those would be the types of questions.
So the cool thing is you could take some of those pictures that I provided in that one report that I sent you and cross-reference them with here that you get to see, because some of the pumps are not buried. They're on a skid that can be replaced. But you're exactly right. We could take a walk through too as well, and adding and modifying different spaces that are within this building to provide a changing green room, an area for makeup and staging for our actors and actresses as they prepare for productions. Career and technical education is taking a look at our tech ed rooms and finding a way to provide so they can access the lumber from the outside in, and providing an opportunity for our teacher to have a visual representation across the board. So he, as a teacher, has one space that flows and can do a multitude of different projects and a multitude of different things within it.
When you have on, and this may be out of the scope of tonight too, but when you have down new high school, middle school, is that two buildings or is that a high school, middle school combination? And what does that look like in terms of, if we're looking futuristically, where will it be? Like, what does that mean? Or
Yeah, exciting, not sure. High school and middle school combinations exist. High school and middle school combinations exist in certain areas, and right now there are some that are being built that we could go take a fun field trip to see.
Well, just let me back up. Didn't it used to be that way here? It used to be that way here.
Oh, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, it did, right? Yeah, it was 7th through 12th.
I think there's a way, construction-wise, to modify, so you're sharing cafeteria equipment, you're sharing gyms and having an auxiliary gym, you're sharing HVAC systems, so our team has the ability to only have to fix one set of equipment. Sharing of staff, the auditorium can be shared, so that you'd only need one particular space in that area. Our principals can run from one side of the building to another, so they would be equipped with running shoes. No,
But I meant, like, where, in the terms of the building it, where do you do it? And what do you do with the students if you're not ripping schools down? Well, like, you know what I mean? That's, I guess, I'm logistically.
So correct, you'd build while the buildings are being occupied already and still being used. And the site development or space would be subject to lots of geotech studies. Where is the best area? What is the best access to 11 and 15? We do have some property that we did in fact purchase. What would that look like? How do we back in to perhaps in the stadium? Where would that be? So we have access to locker rooms that are in close distance and proximity to our stadium, as well as a training room. So those types of things that you can do a multitude of functional design, functional architecture by design, by creating this. So I don't have we have a lot of space, and we can carve out a lot of different spaces within this campus. It may be the removal of a particular field and then repurposing that field later on. So there's a lot of different things. When I say field, could be a field that's softball, baseball. I'm not sure. So anybody listening to baseball and softball, it doesn't mean we're taking your fields away. They're spaces. Well, that's a really good point, and we'd have to take a look at, can they be reused? Can those wells be reused and repiped? I don't know that answer. Experts would be able to tell us. I'm not sure.
Do we even have enough space
Yes,
to do? We do have enough space to do it
I
based
believe so.
on- Okay.
I believe so. But again, if you wanted me to further look at that, it would involve,
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just more, I'm sure you've thought about this before this presentation tonight. So I was just
think
trying to
about
figure
things
out
when I
like
drive and
how.
walk. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I just was trying to figure out logistically how that works. If you keep your students in the existing buildings while you're building the other building, and then you build that building, and then you tear those other buildings down, and you put fields there or whatever.
There will always be a couple-year pinch point for something, whether there be, relocation of A or B, not necessarily students. We want to maintain students the best we can in either. But you're right. It could play in some logistics. When you look at some of the major renovations just in terms of fields, looking at and ahead, if we plan forward for any middle school, high school combination, it would be coming on the horizons of replacement of field turf as well as replacement of track. So you build that within the program, which you're already doing too. I think if we're going to plan, we plan for the future. We plan big, because really I think that's really worth having those discussions. And if you want to thwart some of my energies and some of my enthusiasm, that's okay too. And we can relook at things. But I think it gives us this commitment to the future and a commitment to looking forward. And we can begin to have some of these planning sessions, visits, discussions, without getting really into the weeds and commitments.
If I could share, excuse me, a personal story. My daughter is an 8th grader. She's going to 9th grade next year. She's in Downingtown East High School. They had an orientation for parents and students. They have 1,800 students in that school. They all eat lunch at the same time. 1,800 students eating lunch at the same time. There's possibilities out there. We just have to be creative and think about them and be open to those kinds of ideas. I find that amazing. 1,800 students eating lunch at one time.
All right, let's take a look just real quick at, speaking of, just some of our commitments right now of where we want to be. We know option one we've got and we need. So there's a couple of things. We can take our current capital reserve and deplete it and send that to Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. Or we can put that money into the current budget of $1.4 million and add that to our current existing budget and send it over to Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. I would highly suggest we don't do either of those, but we look at least, if we're going to do something, option one, which is the borrowing of those funds as we are looking to self-finance our commitment to Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. Option 2, 3, and 4, and 5 are all options, and I will send this to you to have, and you could take a look at it a little bit better than staring at the screen here. These options take and look at our debt run and our very similar to where our current debt structure is, and keeping that debt structure in place. So this is the kind of that interactive piece that it's okay right now, but I think we're moving as we get close to needing a direction as to which, if any of those options you want to do, and knowing full well that I would at least recommend option one to allow us to begin that process of advertising, soliciting bids, and beginning that framework to begin to take that funds. Arbitraging money of $1.4 million, it's a little bit. It's not as much, of course, of being able to arbitrage $15 million, which will ultimately allow you to do some other things just based on the current interest rates.
Didn't they say we have to spend what, like 33% of that within 3 years or something?
Yes, we would ask for a no penalty payback option, meaning that you could put that back on to the loan proceeds itself. But yes, it would have to be committed, and it could be as broad as capital improvement projects, I believe. But yes, it will have to be spent within that period of time. And you're exactly right. I think there's different parameters of how that slow draw can occur and being utilized. So really what loans don't want you to do is to take that money and just set it in a capital reserve and never use it and just make money on the money. So what I'll do, it is, and I want to be mindful, it is 10:26. I'll ask if there's any questions on this. We went through really a lot of information this evening. I will send you what that debt structure looks like. You have this draft copy of our capital improvements project. If there are any spaces, field trips, or things you want to see, reach out to me. We'll be more than happy to take on an interactive walkthrough and tour to show and to take a look at any of the spaces. But I do want to be mindful of time and allow for any questions that remain, and then allow for any public comment that may exist.
It sounds like we're going to need to take action on what you're talking about right here very quickly if we're going to fund the tech school, correct? With borrowed money?
Yes, with borrowed money, and I believe the latest we could probably go out is April to be able, that's the very latest.
I mean, I guess we could always use our fund balance and then borrow money down the road and replace our fund balance.
You know, we could absolutely look at that to do a, what's that called? A resolution to basically refund ourselves with that. That's not uncommon. We could probably get that done sooner rather than later and add that to the agenda, which basically means, you're right, we can use capital reserve, and then what we would certainly do is go out for that loan proceed and then reimburse ourselves the money we had spent. That's not an uncommon practice, right?
No, it's not uncommon.
Yeah, option 3 would get you a little closer, but yes.
Benefit of borrowing further out is if the interest rate is the same.
Dr. Jones, are you asking what the benefit of option 5 might be?
Yeah, versus, yeah, more like a 2 or a 3.
Sure. Option 5, if we remember, some of the conversations were also in looking at a return on the investment, and that return on the investment was part of our solar discussion to see how we can accomplish some of our facilities planning, as well as looking at alleviating some of our fixed costs, or some of our rising costs, to be able to control that. That is still something that we can talk about, certainly not at 10:30 at night, but we can. But that would be an option. The other option is keeping your run rate continually as a line item in the budget for any future projects that may occur. Allows you to continue to have that in the budget for as long as you can, as long as we want, as long as we fiscally can be responsible to ensure that by that point, there may be other major projects, middle school, high school, which essentially keeping that run rate still allows you to have that maximum control, which it would allow you to, would allow us, sorry, not you, would allow us to have that ability to control and essentially fiscally be able to develop a new building or new build without a huge burden to taxpayers.
So I guess my question is, if we had agreed to keep our debt service about the same, which all of these does, what would be what would be the difference between going with option 5, which is multiple, borrowing a larger amount of money with the same debt service over 5 years, versus an option 3, which is less money and a debt service over 3 years? Once we get to those 3 years, then borrowing again to maintain the same debt service, what would be, I always thought the benefit would be a lower interest rate, lower interest, but I don't see that.
Yeah, and this is just for illustrative purposes on interest rates. Again, every time you borrow, there's going to be legal fees associated with it, right? Broker fees that are associated with that. Borrowing in option 5 is a commitment, major commitment over time. And again, we would have to designate projects that we want to be able to address in option 5.
So in option 5, when can we refinance that?
We would ask that it could be repaid at any time.
And then that allows you to refinance it?
Yes.
Okay. Because,
Okay.
I mean, 4.1 is not probably going to be a good interest rate 2 or 3 years from now.
That's what I was thinking.
So,
Right, so what, yeah.
Then why borrow it?
because if you borrow it twice, you pay the fees twice.
Finance, you have to pay fees too.
But you're going to save, if you borrowed it twice, you'd be refinancing it 3 times eventually.
Yeah, but Chester's not really saying we're gonna pay off that loan. We're gonna use it to pay it back and then have to.
That's how you refi. You have to pay off the original one and get a new one.
I understand that. What I'm saying though is it sounds like we're gonna have to go through almost all of those same fees again. I know that it's gonna be as simple as, when I refinance my house, I still have to do loan origination.
There's fees.
Can you make, not tonight necessarily, but I would like very much to know your recommendation between you and Chester. Like, the board will obviously have to make a decision, but what do you both think would be the most, fiscally secure thing to do?
Absolutely. And I think my recommendation is also tied, though, to a discussion that we should probably have some finality to, which involves a solar array and what that might look like for our district. And again, we have a lot of questions when it involves a solar array that I and Mr. Holmes and our team can't answer until we have somebody who can answer those questions, such as PP&L's interface interconnection fee and application, doing a full-fledged study of the shading in areas. What does that look like in terms of scope? Where can we put these, and where can't we put these, and where do we want these? All of that, I can look at and go to Google Earth and think that's great, but until we hired or procured somebody who's an expert in that works for us, I can't answer those questions.
And we are now discussing the possibility of building a new building. And these solar arrays are, 30, 40 years or more down the road. And so understanding that all of that is uncertain, give us a recommendation anyway, I guess, because we have to make a decision. We have to make a decision on this. So I just, and I just appreciate you putting it on us, but I'm just, let us know.
Our recommendations might be different.
And I think,
recommendations
Mike,
may
are
be
you
different.
are you asking for a recommendation on what we spend the money on, or a recommendation on, do you recommend we go out, borrow money for 15 years, maybe not designating what that money is for right yet? Okay, because then that's a different recommendation. If does that make sense? Dr. Fox looks like he's sitting
Yeah,
there
but I
with
think
his
you
mind
need
with
both.
No, I'm sorry, I'm just sweating.
No, but what I'm saying, there's nothing to sweat about. I'm thinking Mike
no,
is
it's
not
not.
asking. Oh, shut up. Because it sounds to
No.
me, you know what I mean?
It does. What you're asking makes sense. You're asking us to make a recommendation of an option without making a recommendation of what that option is going to be spent on. Correct?
That's kind of where we have to be right now.
I think that's where we have to be right now, because to be honest with you, I mean, like, if you're talking about a building, one could be mutually exclusive over the other. You might have to wait to do your solar array until the new building is built and you put the solar panels on top of the building, which would not be included in this 10-year plan.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying,
Correct.
right?
But some things are certain. We
And-
have to pay
Yes,
the vote back.
yes,
We have
right.
to replace bleachers.
Yeah.
Some of these other things.
Well, and that stuff's already been laid out on here with the net proceeds that they're suggesting in this recommendation on here. Sort of. Chester's now grinning. I love this. These little grins going on over there. It's like a fly on the wall. I want to be there tomorrow morning.
All right, so we have our charge and discussions, and we'll come back with some recommendations at the next caucus meeting. We'll send some information out so you get a chance to see this as well. Thank you for indulging us in some really good conversations. We know we have some work to do ahead of us. We'll, again, our job is, and we are here and committed to provide you, as the board, as much information as needed to be able to make informed decisions, not just in year 1, 2, 3, but in the future as well as we continue to plan for the future. Any public comments at this time? Nobody's staying up this late. Thank you very much for being here and listening and joining us, and all of your work in our policy committee as well. So we appreciate that. Hearing none,